Hello everyone, Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in the DC-verse as the Shadow of Death, Part 2. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
The sun had barely begun its rise, casting golden streaks over the towering skyline as Ashbourne strolled into the monolithic structure of Shadow Corporation. The lobby was quiet, the hum of early activity still distant. Coffee in hand, he moved through the quiet corridors with the same calm stride as always, his footsteps echoing lightly until he reached his office. The familiar hiss of the biometric lock, the soft swing of the door, and then, peace. He sipped his coffee, savoring the silence, when a knock came. He raised a brow. "Come in," he said casually, lowering his cup. The door opened and Kara stepped inside. She was once again dressed in her now clean construction uniform, her golden hair pulled back, face calm but curious. Ashbourne smiled faintly, leaning against his desk. "You're early today. How can I help you?" Kara walked forward, voice steady but uncertain. "The project is over now. Mr. Howley said there's no other assignment for the team. So, I came to check what I'm supposed to do." Ashbourne nodded, setting his cup down. "I was going to call you in about that, actually. Your community service is officially over." She blinked. "Already?" "Originally, the court planned for you to complete the housing project over the span of a year," he said as he pulled open a drawer. "But you and your team finished it in just 4 months." He retrieved an envelope and held it out toward her. "This is your last paycheck. Starting today, you're free to go." Kara stared at the envelope, not moving. "Is that okay? I mean, the court stated a year of service. Won't this cause trouble?" Ashbourne chuckled, his usual calm amusement in full display. "I'm the judge of that, and as far as I'm concerned, it's done. If the court has a problem, they know where to find me." Then his expression grew serious. "You're being targeted now. Keeping you in one place, one known location, day after day, that's a risk. And I don't compromise my employees' safety. Ever." Kara looked at him, surprised. Her voice dropped slightly. "You don't have to do this for me. I can handle myself. I'll be careful. No one's going to take me off guard again." Ashbourne's smile didn't falter, but his tone left no room for argument. "This isn't up for discussion. The decision is finalized." For a moment, Kara stood there, conflicted. Her shoulders sagged slightly as she looked at the envelope in her hands. Then, "Can you help me split this between the team? They all worked hard, and I couldn't have done it without them." Ashbourne nodded. "Of course." She lingered just a moment longer, eyes studying his unreadable expression. "Thanks for everything." Then she turned and left, the door closing behind her with a soft click. Outside the office, Kara walked down the hallway, her thoughts heavy. She couldn't shake the guilt. Ashbourne had just put himself in potential legal trouble for her sake. And even more than that, she worried that someone might hurt her old crew to get to her. Meanwhile, in the quiet of his office, Ashbourne returned to his coffee, eyes calm. To him, there was no weight in the decision. She had done the work expected of her, and there was simply no reason to keep her around. Ashbourne's quiet office was interrupted by the quiet creak of the office door opening once again, just minutes after Kara had left. Ashbourne, sitting behind his desk sipping the last of his now lukewarm coffee, turned his head. His calm expression subtly shifted at the sight of the visitor. It was Rex, his old assistant, and more than that, the closest thing he had to a family left. The older man's usual calm, friendly demeanor was replaced with something heavy, something grim. Ashbourne's brow lifted just slightly. "What's wrong, Uncle Rex?" The man stepped forward with slow, purposeful steps, stopping just across from Ashbourne's desk. His voice carried the weight of years held in restraint. "Ashbourne, I need to speak with you about your behavior." His tone was firm, parental. "It can't go on like this." Ashbourne remained still, listening. "You've partnered with a snake like Lex Luthor, of all people. You let a group of villains who once tried to kidnap you into your home, gave them jobs and let them sleep there." Rex's face was drawn tight, his jaw clenched. He continued, voice growing louder. "The Joker, the most deranged man in Gotham, holds a grudge against you. I'm pretty sure Batman has one too. You were kidnapped by some thug in Jump City just months ago, and yesterday you fought Metallo, a walking tank powered by a space rock. His voice cracked just slightly as he finished. You're putting yourself through too much danger. You are just a regular human. You must stop this. I don't want to see you harmed. Ashbourne opened his mouth, but Rex raised a hand, cutting him off. Your father was my closest friend. I think of you as the son I never had. So please, stop this. Take care of yourself properly. For a brief moment, Ashbourne's body betrayed him. He felt a sudden tightening in his chest, unfamiliar and hollow. Then, somewhere deep inside, he heard it, a faint, childish voice whispering something innocent and broken. Say sorry. Please say sorry. His expression didn't falter, didn't shift, but his mind reeled. That voice, it wasn't his. Or rather, it shouldn't be. He had long believed that the original Ashbourne, the true soul of this body, was gone. So why were there echoes? Was it the memories? Were they just so strong that they lingered, even without the soul? He set those questions aside. With a tired sigh, he met Rex's eyes and spoke, gently. I'm sorry for making you worry, but everything is under control. I know what I'm doing. Ashbourne leaned against the desk, arms crossed. Lex's games won't touch me. If he oversteps, I know how to bring him down. And those 5. You've seen the reports. They're thriving. They were never suited for the life of crime to begin with. They just needed a chance at something else. Rex frowned, unconvinced, but said nothing. The Joker is busy playing tag with his beloved Batman, and Batman's too busy juggling the whole world. As for yesterday, Ashbourne gave a small smirk. I had Gizmo's little toys. I could have lasted long enough for help to arrive. I was never in any real danger. Rex scowled, shaking his head. You shouldn't have been there in the first place. Metallo came for the girl. That had nothing to do with you. Ashbourne's smile faded, and he spoke with a quiet finality. She was my employee. I brought her here. That means she gets the same treatment as everyone else. She would have had my help and my protection, no matter who came for her. His eyes sharpened. And let's not forget, she was an easy target because I made it that way. That's on me. There was silence between them for a few moments, the tension thick. Then Rex sighed and stepped back. You've grown into a good man. Despite everything you went through, Elijah and Serafina would have been proud of you. But please, be careful. You don't know when your luck will run out. He looked away, voice softer now, tired. Some things are out of our control, and it only takes a moment, just one, for a life to end. You should understand that better than anyone. Don't make me grieve the loss of another person I care about. Ashbourne's smile returned, softer this time, almost reassuring. You won't need to grieve for me, Uncle Rex. I plan to live much longer than you. So, stop worrying about that. The old man gave a small grunt, something between disapproval and affection, before turning and leaving the office. Unbeknownst to either of them, far above the building, just barely visible through the haze of morning sunlight, a figure lingered in the sky. Kara hovered quietly, having heard only fragments through the window when she turned back mid-flight, curiosity pulling her back. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but since yesterday, she couldn't get Ashbourne out of her mind after hearing his past. And now she understood him a little more. He was a good person, and that unshakable smile wasn't confidence, it was truly his way of coping all along. She recalled how her colleagues jumped to praise and defend him and smiled. She is now truly one of them. Just like them, she felt both gratitude and respect for him. The sharp ring of Ashbourne's private phone broke the morning calm. He answered immediately, and the voice on the other end was panicked and shaken. Sir, one of our labs, the cryogenics facility, it's under assault. Hostages taken, but the details are unclear. Ashbourne didn't waste a second. Call the helicopter. Now. He turned on his heel, stepping out of his office with urgency as Rex scrambled to follow orders. Minutes later, the Shadow Corp chopper soared through the sky, cutting a clean path toward the experimental cryogenics lab on the outskirts of the city. When he arrived, the place was already a storm of flashing lights and cordoned lines. Police had surrounded the building, keeping civilians at a distance. Officers barked orders and spoke into radios, trying to get a handle on the chaos. Ashbourne disembarked from the helicopter, his long coat flaring slightly in the wind. He approached the nearest officer without hesitation. Ashbourne Black. I own this place. The policeman blinked, startled, before holding out a hand to keep him back. Sir, please, it's dangerous. Some armed groups taken the lab. We're still trying to identify who they are. No contact yet. Before the conversation could continue, a gust of wind swept the street. A familiar red and blue blur descended from the sky and landed next to Ashbourne. Supergirl. Hey. You okay? She greeted him. Ashbourne noted the change in her costume. Her midsection is not exposed anymore, but this was not the time to comment on that. He just gave a short nod. I'm flattered you came. Where's the big guy? She folded her arms, floating gently above the pavement. Off-world with the League. But don't worry, I've got this. A low creak echoed from the facility. The front doors slid open, and a small group stepped out. Men and women in heavy winter clothing, faces obscured behind dark sunglasses and hoods. Each one held a researcher at gunpoint. But the one who stood out, in a reinforced suit and a dome-like helmet that emitted a constant frosty mist, was unmistakable. Mr. Freeze. He raised one gloved hand, revealing a device in his palm, its core pulsing with a faint blue light and emitting a rhythmic tick. This is not a negotiation, he called out, his voice robotic through the helmet's filter. If this bomb detonates, everything in a 100-meter radius will be encased in solid ice. Move aside, or everyone here dies. The police hesitated. One officer called out, "There's nowhere to run. Lay down your weapons and surrender." Above, Supergirl's eyes narrowed. She began to rise into the air, scanning the bomb's core with X-ray vision. But before she could act, a voice called out, "Don't." It was Ashbourne. His tone was calm, but carried weight. Supergirl turned, confused. What? Why not? Ashbourne didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward. The police yelled after him, startled. "Sir, get back. It's not safe." Some even pointed their weapons at him reflexively, unsure of his intent. But Ashbourne didn't slow. He moved past the officers, past the barricades, until the guns of Freeze's goons were pointed directly at him. He kept walking. "My name is Ashbourne Black," he began, his voice steady, his steps unshaken. "Owner of this fine establishment. And you're far from Gotham, Mr. Victor Fries." Mr. Freeze's head tilted slightly. The cold steam from his suit hissed louder as he raised the weapon in his free hand, aiming it at Ashbourne's heart. "Didn't expect a businessman to know my name." Ashbourne smiled. "I make it a point to know the names of people qualified to be good employees." Freeze narrowed his eyes behind the visor. The goons looked at each other, unsure if this was a joke. But Ashbourne continued, "How about this? Work for me, for the rest of your life. In return, I'll give you what you want." A harsh scoff echoed through the speaker in Freeze's helmet. "You don't even know what I want. You couldn't possibly understand." Ashbourne's smile sharpened. "Oh, but I do. I have the cure you are looking for. Was planning to visit you in Gotham, actually. But I've been busy lately." Freeze's weapon charged with a high-pitched whine, and he fired a shot at the ground just in front of Ashbourne. The blast flash froze a chunk of the pavement, sending a sheet of ice crackling outward. Ashbourne didn't flinch. "Is your pride too big to allow someone else to save Mrs. Nora?" he asked. Freeze growled, his grip tightening on the gun. "No one can be trusted. No one but me. I'm the only one who can save her." Ashbourne looked at him for a moment silently, then turned and began walking back toward the police. He almost passed the barricade. Almost. Then, he stopped, his back to Freeze. The smile on his face now gone, his voice cold and sharp. "I tried to be civil." He turned slowly. "You will release everyone and surrender. Or I will pay any amount necessary to find where you hid your wife's frozen body. I will tear through every decommissioned cryolab, every old hospital, every Wayne Tech storage unit in North America. And when I find her, I'll destroy her." The words cut through the air like a razor. "I'll bring you her death certificate. And her head. Your choice." For the first time, Victor Fries hesitated and a heavy silence fell over everyone present. Supergirl and the police stood frozen themselves, not from any temperature drop, but from Ashbourne's words. His threat echoed like a sinister bell tolling across the scene. Even Mr. Freeze, stoic, logical, cold as his namesake, was briefly stunned. "Do you think I'll believe your bluff?" Freeze's voice wavered behind his helmet. "You do that, and you become a criminal." Ashbourne didn't stop walking. His back still to them, he let out a dark chuckle, dry and sharp like broken glass. Doctors pull life support when a case is hopeless. They call it mercy. Killing them becomes a kindness. He paused and looked slightly over his shoulder, just enough for the glint of calculation in his narrowed eyes to be seen. "You think I can't make her death legal," he said quietly but clearly. "I can get the order signed by medical professionals, pass it through judiciary review, and bury it under mountains of paperwork. Then I'll leak a story pinning it all on you. How you ruined the future of a poor woman out of spite. The tragedy of Mrs. Nora." A shrug. That's the benefit of having too much money, and friends in high places. No one said a word. Then Ashbourne turned away fully, the sharp edge of his coat slicing through the air as he walked. "I've lost interest in you now. I'll check the news later." And with that, he walked off, not sparing even a glance behind. "You won't walk away from me." Mr. Freeze roared in sudden rage. He raised his freeze gun and fired. The icy beam tore across the air. But Supergirl was faster. In a split-second blur, she dropped from the sky and threw herself in front of Ashbourne, the ice shattering harmlessly against her invulnerable body. Ashbourne didn't flinch. Didn't even turn around. "Get back here." Freeze screamed, the calm logic in his voice fully replaced by desperation. And in a final wild attempt, he threw the ticking cryogenic bomb toward Ashbourne's direction. "No." Supergirl's voice rang out. She dashed forward and caught the bomb mid-air, the freezing core humming violently in her hands. Without hesitation, she shot skyward, breaking the sound barrier as she soared high and far, and with one mighty throw, she flung the bomb beyond the city's limits. A small distant pulse of light flashed in the sky, then vanished. When she landed again, her boots thudded softly against the pavement. She looked back toward the scene. Mr. Freeze stood still, his gun lowering slowly, his breath heavy. Around him, his crew looked between him and the police, unsure what to do. But he knew. He stared at the sky, where Ashbourne's helicopter began to raise. He feared that man now, because in Ashbourne, he saw someone who would do anything to win. And if that man really set his sights on Nora, what could he, a fugitive, a wanted criminal with no political standing, possibly do to protect her? Nothing. His hand fell to his side. His voice was quiet when he spoke. "Surrender. Let the police take you in." His crew looked at him in disbelief, but obeyed, slowly dropping their weapons and raising their hands. The police moved in cautiously, cuffing the goons one by one. Supergirl exhaled, a long and relieved breath. No casualties. No more explosions. No one harmed. She looked to the sky again. The Shadow Corp helicopter grew smaller and smaller on the horizon. In her heart, she didn't know whether to feel grateful or worried. That was the first time she saw Ashbourne like that. Ashbourne stepped out of the helicopter and marched straight through the Shadow Corp headquarters with his usual calmness. He entered his office and was met with an unexpected sight. Supergirl, floating just outside the tall glass window, arms crossed, wind teasing the ends of her golden hair. Ashbourne didn't slow his steps. He walked up to the window and opened it with a faint sigh. "Not working here anymore doesn't mean you can't use the door, you know." Ashbourne shrugged and walked back to his desk, his voice casual. It was the easiest and safest way to defuse the situation. Victor's only motivation is his wife. He wouldn't risk her. Supergirl floated behind him, still unconvinced. "Still, hearing you threaten him like that, it was unnerving. You sounded like a villain." Ashbourne chuckled darkly, opening a drawer behind his desk. Then the play was perfect. He pulled out 2 red vials, their liquid glowing faintly. Her curiosity piqued. Supergirl tilted her head. She caught sight of 3 total vials, one still in the drawer, and beside them, a strange-looking pistol. "What's that?" Ashbourne didn't look at her as he carefully set 2 of the vials aside. The cure. For Victor and Nora. Her eyes widened. You weren't lying about that. Why would I lie? He said, placing 1 vial in a protective case. I was serious when I said I wanted him to work for me. For life. He has a brilliant mind. I see a greater purpose for his talents. Using cryogenics only to freeze people is a waste. So, what's in the vials really? Supergirl asked, following him as he exited the office. Ashbourne walked steadily down the hall, Supergirl hovering beside him. A magical potion. It's called the Holy Water of Life. It can heal nearly any illness. Powerful magic. Difficult to make. Rarer to acquire. She gave him a skeptical look. And how exactly did you get your hands on something like that? Ashbourne gave her a look that mixed amusement with confidence. Do I need to remind you who I am? But if you're hoping for details, well, they're secret. And even if you knew, you wouldn't be able to get it. Supergirl's mind briefly flickered to his earlier words, about his wealth and high connections. She frowned slightly. However he got it, it must have cost a fortune. But what she would never guess, not even in her most imaginative theories, was the truth. Ashbourne had created the potion himself. The recipe, the magic, the work, all his own doing. He simply kept it in his office, for convenience and not to attract attention if he ever needed them. He didn't need to even hide them, as no one would think something like this is put simply in a drawer. As they neared the roof access door, Supergirl tapped his arm lightly. And the pistol? In your drawer. It didn't look normal. Ashbourne's hand paused on the doorknob. It's from the same source as the potion. You don't need to worry about it. Supergirl narrowed her eyes. A magic pistol? What does it do? Instead of answering, Ashbourne opened the door and smirked. I see you changed your costume. The new one suits you more. Supergirl blinked in surprise, then smiled wide. Thanks. Hey, don't change the subject. Ashbourne's chuckle echoed as they stepped onto the rooftop. You're awfully curious about my business. How would you feel if I started digging around to find where you live among the humans? That's not the same, and you know it. That's just your opinion. Their playful bickering continued until they reached the helicopter, its blades already beginning to spin. Ashbourne climbed aboard, adjusting his coat as the wind picked up. You heading to the police station? Supergirl asked. Ashbourne nodded. Of course. I want Victor to work for me. Besides, I wonder what his reaction is going to be when he sees me again. Without asking, Supergirl jumped into the seat beside him. Then I'm coming too. I want to see how this plays out. Ashbourne didn't mind. Not one bit. The police station wasn't far, just a few minutes by helicopter. When Ashbourne and Supergirl entered through the main doors, all conversations seemed to halt. Officers and staff turned to look. Most eyes immediately locked on Supergirl, admiration and/or flickering in their gazes. But the few who had been at the lab, who'd witnessed Ashbourne's cold-blooded threat, looked at him with something else entirely, intrigue and a sliver of unease. Unbothered by the attention, Ashbourne strode confidently toward the reception desk and said plainly, I want to speak with Victor Fries. Alone. The officer at the desk frowned. That's not standard protocol. We can't just. I'll be with him, Supergirl interjected calmly, stepping beside Ashbourne. I vouch for him. There won't be any trouble. The change was immediate. The officer blinked, gave a nervous nod, and motioned to one of the detectives. It amused Ashbourne how fast the mighty agreed when one of their capes gave a word. He was treated like a fragile, delicate thing just because he didn't wear a cape. They were escorted into a small interrogation room, grey and cold, with a large one-way mirror lining the right wall. Ashbourne took a seat, fingers interlaced, while Supergirl leaned casually against the wall. Moments later, the door creaked open and a pair of officers stepped in with Mr. Freeze shackled between them. The man in heavy armor stopped in his tracks as soon as he laid eyes on Ashbourne. His blue-tinted gaze sharpened. You. Ashbourne smiled warmly, like greeting an old friend. Glad to see you found reason. Victor. Things could have gone much darker. Victor's boots thudded as he stepped forward. Are you here to mock me, or threaten me again? Things like that lose their charm quickly, Ashbourne replied smoothly. I'm here to repeat my offer. You work for me, and I save your wife. Victor's jaw tightened. You really think I'd believe someone like you? I'll never work for you. Ashbourne didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small red vial, placing it on the table. The liquid inside shimmered softly, pulsing like it was alive. This isn't science, he said. This is magic. A potion that can cure any illness. Victor's eyes locked onto the vial, its faint red glow reflecting in his visor. Ashbourne leaned in slightly, voice calm. Drink it, and you'll go back to being normal. No more suit. No more dome. Just a normal human. Victor's stare flicked between Ashbourne and the vial. I'm not letting you play me. His voice cracked with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Your lies are going too far. Ashbourne's smile vanished. Wayne Tech Storage Unit Number 13. Victor froze. His pupils shrank behind the glass as those words struck deep. Drink it. Now. You bastard. Victor suddenly roared and lunged across the table, but Supergirl was already there, catching him mid-motion and holding him back. Leave her alone, he screamed. Don't you touch her. Ashbourne remained seated, untouched, his gaze sharp as a blade. Then drink it. Every single drop of it. The tension was thick. Supergirl's grip didn't falter, but her face showed her conflict. She hated this kind of emotional blackmail, but she understood why he was doing it. Victor was too stubborn, too buried in fear and pride. This was the only way to reach him. Victor's shoulders sagged as rage gave way to despair. His fists slowly unclenched. He looked down at the vial on the table, his breath shallow. Then, without a word, he reached up, unscrewed the dome protecting his head, and lifted the vial to his lips. The room held its breath. He drank it all. A soft green glow enveloped his body as thin wisps of white mist coiled from his skin and suit. The glow faded gradually, but something within him had clearly changed. Ashbourne gestured toward the one-way mirror. Look. Victor turned his head and gasped. In the reflection, his skin was normal. The pale, frost-bitten color was gone. He looked human again. Alive. He took a deep breath, and for the first time in years, it felt natural. No burning. No strain. He exhaled slowly, a trembling hand reaching to touch his face. Ashbourne allowed a small, satisfied smile. Congratulations, Victor. You're back to normal. Ashbourne let him have the moment, saying nothing. Even Supergirl stood silently, watching the man process the unimaginable. Victor finally broke the silence, his voice barely more than a whisper. Am I really cured? Not just temporarily. Ashbourne gave a single nod. The potion cures any illness. No need to worry about becoming a snowman again. Victor turned slowly, his eyes searching Ashbourne's face for even a hint of deception. Before he could speak, Ashbourne pulled out a second vial, identical to the first, the red liquid inside gleaming faintly in the dim room. The same potion, Ashbourne said calmly, can save your wife. Victor's breath caught. His lips trembled. It can save Nora. Ashbourne nodded once more. Yes. But understand, these potions are extremely expensive. You'll have to work for me, for the rest of your life. I have big plans for you. The words barely settled before Victor's knees hit the floor. Please. I'll do anything you want. No matter what it is, crime, science, anything. Just save Nora. I'm begging you. Ashbourne's smile stretched slightly, amusement flickering behind his dark eyes. Then take a seat, Victor. Let's discuss the terms like civilized people. Victor scrambled back to his feet and sat down on the chair like an obedient child summoned to the principal's office. Ashbourne walked around the table slowly, his voice even and smooth. No more crimes. I've been wanting to work on something for a while. Something new. Something that will bring real change to the world. He paused dramatically. And it needs someone of your particular talents. Victor nodded eagerly. Desperate. Anything. Whatever you want, I'll do it. Ashbourne clasped his hands behind his back and leaned forward ever so slightly. I want to make a new kind of ice cream. The silence was immediate. Victor blinked. Supergirl blinked. Both stared at him like he'd suddenly spoken in ancient Sanskrit. Ice cream? Victor asked slowly, baffled. The great project that will change the world is ice cream? The one we eat. Supergirl added, brow furrowed. Ashbourne's confident grin didn't waver. Ice cream flavors haven't evolved in decades. This is unacceptable. My taste buds cry for salvation. So I'm going to get the best chef money can buy. And you, Victor, will be my cryogenics expert. We're going to redefine what ice cream is. He leaned in. So, are you willing to work in ice cream development for the rest of your life? Victor opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. He searched Ashbourne's face for a crack, a twitch, a smirk, anything that would betray this as a joke. He found nothing. I am willing, Victor finally said weakly, praying this wasn't all a cruel trick. Ashbourne laughed and clapped his hands together. A wise decision. I'll begin the process to get you out. Then we'll head to Gotham and save your wife. For now, say your farewells to your goons. We'll be seeing each other again soon. With that, Ashbourne turned and exited the room, leaving behind a hopeful and very confused Victor Fries. Supergirl followed, her eyes narrowed, as if trying to see directly into Ashbourne's brain. Once they were outside the station, she asked the question burning in her mind. Were you serious in there? This is all about ice cream. Ashbourne laughed lightly. Of course. Supergirl folded her arms. Those potions of yours are worth more than anything on Earth. You're telling me you're using them for dessert? Ashbourne shrugged. To me, they're not. I have more money than I'll ever need. What I lack is new experiences, joys, curiosities. Supergirl gave him a long, skeptical look. I don't believe you. Not one bit. Ashbourne smirked. Believe whatever you want. But let's not forget, earlier you said I acted like a villain. Yet you helped me in there. You held a desperate man down so coldly. You broke him more than I ever did. Supergirl's eyes narrowed. I was helping you. I didn't like it. Ashbourne stopped walking and turned to face her, arms spread. Deep down, you enjoyed it. The act of cruelty. How evil of you, Supergirl. The world should mourn the birth of a sadistic girl pretending to be a hero. She scoffed. If I was one, the first person to feel it would be you. Ashbourne chuckled and turned back toward the building. Fair enough. But for now, I've got a man to release. What comes next is boring bureaucratic nonsense. Spare yourself the pain. Go patrol the city, oh cruel hero. Supergirl shook her head, sighed, then took off into the sky. Good luck, Ice Cream Lord. Ashbourne smiled to himself. Oh, I won't need luck. I have the fate of ice cream on my side. It took an entire day, and several phone calls, to cut through the bureaucracy and walk Victor Fries out of the police station. The charges against him, mainly for his assault on Shadow Corp's lab, were quietly dropped after generous donation exchanged hands, along with a hefty sum posted for bail. Now, as the city shrank beneath them, Victor sat stiffly beside Ashbourne in a luxurious private jet, the kind of aircraft few even saw, let alone boarded. The leather seats, soft lighting, and silent hum of the engines all seemed like something from another world. Victor couldn't speak. He couldn't think. It felt like he was drifting inside a dream, surreal, too delicate to be real. Across from him, Ashbourne lounged easily, tablet in hand, tapping away at some game with casual focus, completely unfazed by the man watching him in awe. Victor couldn't reconcile it. This young man, playful and relaxed, was the same person who had threatened him, then turned his cursed life around and gave him hope to restore his wife. If not for the living proof, his skin warm again, his lungs breathing in the cabin air without machinery, Victor would have dismissed all of it as madness. But here he was, alive, free, normal, and headed to Gotham. The jet landed with barely a tremor. Gotham greeted them as it always did, grey skies, Gothic spires, and the weight of old stories hanging in the air. Victor led Ashbourne through back alleys and guarded gates, eventually bringing him to the quiet, secured Wayne storage unit where she waited, his wife, Nora. As they walked, Ashbourne talked. Not about science or business, but about food. And movies. And what kind of games made people smile? To Victor, it was baffling. Silly, even. This was the man who had cured him, who held power beyond explanation. And yet he was now asking whether sushi was overrated or if arcade games still held up. Victor didn't know what to make of it. Was Ashbourne trying to play with his mind? Or was he just being himself? The inconsistency was maddening. They arrived at the chamber. Victor quickly entered the access code, the door unlocking with a quiet hiss. Inside, behind a wall of reinforced glass and cryogenic mist, was Nora, the same as he had left her, beautiful and silent. Ashbourne stood behind him and wordlessly handed him the potion. "She must drink all of it," he said simply. Victor held the vial like it was sacred, his hands trembling with emotion. Slowly, gently, he began the process of waking Nora from her suspended state. The moment she was stable enough, he fed her the potion as delicately as if it were a kiss. Seconds passed. Then she stirred. Her eyes fluttered open. "Nora." Victor whispered, voice cracking. Her eyes locked on his. She blinked, confused, then focused. "Victor." Tears fell freely from his eyes. "You're awake. You're really awake." Ashbourne gave a polite cough from behind. "I'll give you two some privacy." He turned and stepped out, letting the door seal shut behind him. He stood outside, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. The minutes passed. Then half an hour. Then nearly an hour more. Finally, the door opened. Victor walked out, hand in hand with Nora, who now stood tall, alive, and whole beside him. There was a soft glow to her cheeks, her voice steady as she greeted the man waiting. "You must be Ashbourne," she said with a warm smile. "Victor told me about you. I could never thank you enough for what you've done." Ashbourne gave a low chuckle. "No need to thank me. It was your husband who did all the work. He fought for you, clawed through despair, and never gave up. I just gave him the last piece." He looked at Victor, his tone still light. "He's your hero. I only helped because of him." Nora turned to Victor, her hand tightening around his. Victor, for once, smiled without sadness. It was a true smile, wide and unguarded. And Ashbourne, watching them, allowed himself a quiet nod. The trio, Ashbourne, Victor, and Nora, left the storage facility behind, stepping out into the cold, damp streets of Gotham. As the city loomed around them in familiar gloom, Ashbourne turned to the couple with his usual bright smile. "We'll be relocating you two to Metropolis," he said casually, hands in his pockets. "Victor, your new lab is already under construction. Shadow Corp is setting up a new division just for you, and your job is simple. Create the perfect ice cream." Victor blinked, stunned all over again. "Are you seriously doing all this? Just for ice cream?" Ashbourne hummed as if the question was rhetorical. "Of course." Victor and Nora exchanged glances, utterly dumbfounded. Victor couldn't wrap his mind around it. A potion that could cure the incurable, given away not for profit, not for power but for dessert? It didn't make sense. Unless... Victor reasoned there had to be more to it. Maybe Ashbourne was just eccentric, or maybe, deep down, he truly was a kind person. Maybe he saw in Victor someone who deserved a second chance. After all, Ashbourne would have picked anyone in the cryogenics field. There were many brilliant, more cooperative minds. Yet he had chosen him. A criminal. A desperate man. A husband. And for that, Victor could only believe and hope that it was genuine. Ashbourne, however, had a reason. Victor Fries was the best there was in cryotech. If Ashbourne wanted the finest ice cream the world had ever known, there was no one better. And if, in the process, he bought himself a loyal, grateful genius, then that was just good business. All of this, the effort, the potion, the relocation, was worth it. For a single favor returned. As they moved through the winding Gotham streets, the group came to a sudden stop. The Joker. And by his side, the ever-devoted Harley Quinn. Victor immediately recognized the deranged clown, and his blood turned cold. The Joker's wild eyes landed on Ashbourne, and his painted grin widened like a predator spotting prey. Ashbourne didn't flinch. Instead, he turned to Victor. "Take Nora. Head to Metropolis. Ask for Rex at Shadow Corporation. I'll catch up. Victor hesitated. You can't be serious. That's the Joker. Ashbourne waved dismissively. I'll be fine. Go. Victor clenched his fists. He didn't want to leave Ashbourne behind. Not with that lunatic. But Nora's hand found his. Her warmth a reminder of everything he had to protect. He nodded stiffly. Be careful. Then, dragging his wife along, Victor disappeared into the city's shadows. Ashbourne, now alone, walked toward the Joker and Harley with the same nonchalant grin. Mr. Joker, how have you been? It's been a while. The Joker's laughter filled the alley. I knew you wouldn't run. Most do, when they see me. Ashbourne gave a dramatic gasp. And missed the chance to speak with a living legend? Never. He tilted his head. Do you need a rich hostage again? The Joker's grin faltered slightly. Your audacity is something else. Ashbourne bowed. It's an honor to hear you say that. Puddin', Harley interrupted, pulling out a large mallet. Let me crush his head. The Joker glanced at her, smirking. Tempting, but I want to do it myself. Ashbourne chuckled, still unfazed. Your commitment to chaos and carnage is truly inspirational. The Joker slowly pulled out a 15th century royal dagger, ornately crafted and gleaming under the flickering streetlight. He stepped toward Ashbourne like a hunter sizing up his kill. Ashbourne's eyes sparkled. That's a beautiful piece. Shame it's not made of kryptonite. The Joker narrowed his eyes. In a blur, Ashbourne raised a gun, pointing it squarely at Joker's chest. The clown stopped mid-step, blinking. Where the hell did that come from? Ashbourne smiled wider. I'm a fan, remember? Learned a few of your tricks. The Joker chuckled nervously. Then you won't shoot me, right? Fans don't kill their idols. Ashbourne replied with a wide smile. But you'd love it if I did. Wouldn't it be poetic? One of your fans taking up the mantle, bringing mayhem to the world. The Joker shrugged. I'd be proud if the target was someone else. Ashbourne nodded thoughtfully. Fair. But I still want a souvenir. That dagger. Toss it here, please. The Joker laughed, then hurled the dagger with all his strength. Ashbourne caught it midair effortlessly. The Joker's smile cracked. Not what I expected. Ashbourne twirled the dagger once. I figured. Then, with the same calm air, he lowered his gun, between Joker's legs. The Joker's hands dropped protectively. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Ashbourne gave him an innocent look. Just evening the odds. I thought I'd make you a match for Batman. Isn't that nice of me? The Joker stumbled back. You're worse than me. I don't shoot people there. That's messed up. Even for me. Behind him, Harley pulled out a bazooka and pointed it at Ashbourne. Back off, freak. Touch my pudding balls and you'll pay. The Joker's grin returned. Nice one, Harley. The two sides stood against each other. It was a tense standoff between Ashbourne, Joker, and Harley, and when it reached its boiling point, suddenly, a batarang whizzed through the air, striking Harley's bazooka with pinpoint accuracy and detonating it in a small, controlled explosion. The bazooka shattered in her hands as she stumbled backward, coughing out smoke and confusion. Before anyone could fully react, two dark figures dropped between the opposing parties, Batman and Batgirl. Cloaks billowing and expressions grim, they landed silently like shadows of judgment. Batman's eyes landed immediately on the bizarre scene before him, Ashbourne pointing a gun at the Joker's groin, while Joker shielded himself behind his hands. The Dark Knight's jaw clenched. This wasn't a situation he was used to, but it was all too familiar. Too painful. Batsy! The Joker cried joyfully, like greeting an old friend. This evil guy wants to shoot me in the crotch. You've got to beat him up. Avenge yourself. As he whined, the Joker casually stepped to the side and grabbed the trashcan lid, planting it firmly between his legs like a knight lifting a shield. Batman turned toward Ashbourne, whose gun followed the movement of Joker's protected nether region. Drop the damn gun, Batman said coldly. Ashbourne's eyes flicked to the Dark Knight. I was only trying to make you two a matching pair, he said with a sly smile, so the Joker can't mock you in your private time. Batman's expression darkened. Ashbourne black. This is your last warning. Ashbourne's smile remained, but a new idea bloomed in his mind. He sighed and closed his eyes, as if weighed by destiny. Not this time. He pulled the trigger. Batman moved, instincts kicking in. But as he stepped forward, his body locked, like something unseen had grasped him mid-motion, and pain spread through his entire body. The bullet had hit the metal trash lid, and ricocheted straight into Batman's crotch. The silence that followed was deafening. Batman collapsed to his knees with a pained grunt, his face going pale as he let out a long, agonizing groan. Ashbourne stared blankly, then looked at the Joker. Look what you've done. You shot your partner's balls. The Joker blinked in confusion. Me? You shot the bullet. Ashbourne replied seriously. You deflected it. Why not send it somewhere else? The Joker's face contorted. How the hell am I supposed to control that? Harley stood frozen, her earlier fire completely extinguished. Puddin'. What's happening? From behind, Batgirl screamed, her batarang raised, fury radiating from her every movement. Drop the gun. Ashbourne glanced at her calmly. I'm innocent. Last warning, she snapped, batarang twitching in her hand. Ashbourne looked at Joker. Truce. The Joker hesitated, then slowly nodded. Sure. With no further drama, Ashbourne tossed the gun toward Batgirl, disarming himself without care. Then he turned to the Joker with a friendly smile. Mr. Joker, always a pleasure meeting you. Don't be a stranger. Come visit me in Metropolis. Joker scoffed, adjusting his coat. I think I'll stay in Gotham. Safer for my jewels. With that, he turned, Harley trotting behind, both disappearing into the foggy streets. Ashbourne casually spun Joker's dagger in his hand and began walking the other direction. Batgirl, still tense and shocked, shouted after him. Ashbourne Black. Where do you think you're going? Ashbourne turned his head slightly, still smiling. Leaving, obviously. Got my souvenir from the Joker. He twirled the dagger again, then motioned toward Batman, still groaning on the ground. And I really don't want to be around when he gets back up. Batgirl gaped. You can't just leave. You're going to the police station. Ashbourne stopped in mock surprise. You're right. Best way to stay safe from the big angry bat is in a police station. Thanks for the tip. Where's the nearest station? Batgirl opened her mouth, paused, closed it. No sound came out. Ashbourne chuckled softly. It's okay. Sorry to trouble you with directions. It's clearly not your strong suit. I'll figure it out myself. And with that, he strolled off, dagger in hand, whistling as if nothing had happened. Behind them, Batgirl remained beside Batman, staring down at his crumpled form, Joker gone, and Ashbourne walking free. She couldn't stop any of them. She had to stay beside Batman. What none of them noticed. Just before the bullet had bounced off the trash lid, a shadow, imperceptible to the naked eye in this dark alley, had twisted ever so slightly in the air, redirecting the shot's path with impossible precision. An invisible tendril of darkness. The night was cool in Gotham, the moonlight casting pale shadows across the cracked pavement, when Ashbourne Black casually walked into the nearest police station and approached the front desk. I'd like to turn myself in, he said with a polite smile. The officer behind the desk raised an eyebrow. For? Co-partnering with the Joker, and Ashbourne cleared his throat, shooting Batman in the groin. The room fell still. Several officers nearby turned their heads slowly toward him, unsure if they'd heard correctly. One snorted. Another outright laughed. What is this, open mic night? Ashbourne remained composed. You can check the city cameras at the intersection near Gotham Main Street. Footage should be there. You'll see everything. The desk sergeant waved him off. Yeah, sure, buddy. Next time you partner with the Joker, bring a clown nose. Just then, the front doors swung open and Commissioner Gordon stepped in, brushing the night air off his coat. What's this? He asked, noticing the strange tension. The desk officer chuckled. This guy says he partnered with the Joker and shot Batman in the groin. Gordon's eyes moved to Ashbourne and slightly narrowed. Unlike the others, he remembered the rich guy who actually shot Batman in the past. After a moment of silence, he said, Protocol. Check the footage. I don't care how stupid it sounds. But check it, he said with a glare that silenced any resistance. And if he's lying, he's going down no matter who he is. It didn't take long. Within minutes, a crowd of officers was gathered around the monitors, eyes wide as the footage rolled, Ashbourne smirking, Joker holding a trashcan lid, Batman lunging, and then the shot. A perfect ricochet. Direct hit. Silence filled the room again. They all looked at Ashbourne. They had seen this before. All of them finally realized who he was. Ballbreaker Black. True to his title, he did it again. Soon after, laughter. A lot of laughter. The video began spreading like wildfire among the station. Some officers pulling out their phones, texting it out to friends and family with captions like he did it again. Commissioner Gordon stood frozen, staring at the footage with a mixture of horror and disbelief. Slowly, he turned to face Ashbourne. Ashbourne met his gaze with a serene smile. Self-defense. Complete accident. And now, I believe it's your job to keep that big, angry bat in check, before someone else ends up sterile. Gordon let out a long sigh. Twice. Shot twice. In the groin. By the same guy. I wonder if the bat package even works anymore. That night, Ashbourne was placed in an empty room for protection and will be moved early in the morning. He was more or less a guest at the station. That night, Ashbourne chuckled. Spending the night in this room in exchange for pranking Batman again? Totally worth it. The reason why he headed to the police station is that he wanted the video to spread and make it look like he followed Batgirl's advice. As he leaned against the wall, a realization began to form in his mind. Messing with heroes and villains was sometimes way more fun than work or even dessert. Meanwhile, the footage had gone viral. Within hours, millions had seen it. By sunrise, the incident dubbed Batman's Second Fall was on every social feed, group chat, and even morning news segments. Memes flooded the internet, edited clips of Batman diving, only to be struck down by a bullet bearing Ashbourne's smirking face. Replays. Remixes. Animations. People joked about everything from Batman wearing a steel cup to Ashbourne having divine aim. Rumors spread like wildfire. Batman's crotch is bulletproof. Ashbourne's bullets are cursed to hit only the bat jewels. Batman is fated to never have children. Ashbourne is an agent of divine justice. And with it, the title once spoken around the world as the single person who defeat Batman easily returned in full force, Ballbreaker Black. Ashbourne's phone was flooded with messages, some from confused friends, some from laughing ones. One stood out. A message from Lex Luthor, "Nice shot." Ashbourne smiled to himself. He knew Luthor didn't like any of the Justice League members, including Batman. It seems this prank brought the supervillain some satisfaction. In the Batcave, darkness hung heavier than usual. Bruce sat in silence, face half covered in shadows, replaying the footage again and again on his console. Each time the bullet struck, he flinched internally. Dozens of calls and messages had come in, from concerned allies and friends wishing him a speedy recovery. Each one only deepened the humiliation. The worst of them all came from Alfred, who had stood behind him with a tea tray and said, "Perhaps it is time, Master Wayne, to consider an heir. You know, before we lose the opportunity entirely." Batman didn't reply. He just stared at the screen. Rewind. Play. The shot. The ricochet. The precise angle. Was it luck? He muttered. Or something else? For the first time in his life, Batman wanted to break the bones of someone who hadn't committed a crime. But for now, he watched. Studied. He needed to know the why and how. The morning sun filtered through the grime-streaked windows of Gotham Central Police Station, casting long golden slashes across the dusty floor tiles. Barbara Gordon strode in briskly, her boots clicking against the marble. She scanned the room until her eyes found her father hunched over a stack of paperwork, coffee in hand. "You are here earlier than usual," Commissioner Gordon remarked. "I came to meet the legendary Ashbourne," Barbara replied, crossing her arms, tone light. Gordon let out a tired chuckle. "Legendary? He's just a guy with the weirdest luck I've ever seen. Not much of a legend if you ask me." Barbara tilted her head. "Even legends start as ordinary people. I want to see for myself." Down the hall, Ashbourne lounged casually on a worn-out station couch, reading the Gotham Gazette with a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. His overnight stay had done nothing to dull his spirits. If anything, he looked more refreshed than most officers working a day shift. The door creaked open, and Barbara stepped in. Ashbourne's gaze flicked up from the paper, and recognition flashed instantly in his eyes. "Good morning," he said smoothly, folding the newspaper. "I don't think you work here." Barbara offered a polite smile. Barbara Gordon, Commissioner's daughter. She glanced around the room and then met his gaze again. "When I saw the footage last night, I was surprised. I couldn't help but come to ask you if you came to Gotham just to ruin Batman's reputation." Ashbourne raised an eyebrow. "I did what you asked me to do last night. Go to the police station. And now I'm the villain trying to ruin someone's image." He leaned back, relaxed but pointed. "A bit much, don't you think?" Barbara's smile faltered. Her lips parted slightly as she blinked. "What are you talking about? This is the first time I've spoken to you." Ashbourne rolled his eyes dramatically. Same body shape, same lipstick, same eyes, same voice. "And you just so happen to randomly show up in the morning saying this," he smirked. "Only an idiot wouldn't realize you are Batgirl." Her face went pale instantly. The door creaked again, and Commissioner Gordon stepped in. He glanced at his daughter and immediately sensed something was off. "Barbara, what's wrong?" She quickly turned, voice tighter than she intended. "Nothing, Dad. Just chatting." Gordon's eyes narrowed slightly. His detective instincts rarely failed him, and the look on Barbara's face wasn't just discomfort, it was fear. Ashbourne, meanwhile, wore a contemplative expression. "Interesting," he said, setting the newspaper aside. "Commissioner, a word of advice? You really ought to find more time to talk to your daughter." Barbara's eyes widened in panic, her breath catching. "Don't." "What's going on here?" Gordon asked, clearly alarmed now. Ashbourne didn't answer directly. Instead, he tilted his head. "How old is your daughter?" Gordon blinked, caught off guard. "What kind of question is that? Why does it matter?" Ashbourne's face was unreadable. "I saw her yesterday with an older man. She clearly knew him well. They were very close and she is too young. Which raises the question of when did they get together. I sincerely advise you to start paying more attention to her." Barbara's voice shot out, tense. "You got the wrong person. That wasn't me." Ashbourne shrugged casually. "I trust my memory. And my eyesight. Just offering friendly advice. Take it or leave it." Commissioner Gordon looked at Barbara, suspicion flickering in his eyes, but he didn't press it. "Not yet. There would be time for questions later. You'll be escorted to a plane," he told Ashbourne gruffly. "Gotham's not exactly a safe place for you right now. Consider this our hospitality." Ashbourne stood up and stretched lazily. "Much appreciated, Commissioner." Barbara said nothing as Ashbourne followed her father out the room, hands in his pockets, calm as ever. She stared after him, dread pooling in her stomach. He knew. Somehow, without even trying, Ashbourne Black had figured out her secret. She regretted coming to the station to meet him. And now she had to tell Bruce. In the conference room, Victor Fries sat quietly, arms folded, his icy blue gaze fixed on the man standing at the head of the room. Around him, a dozen others leaned forward in their seats, intrigued and confused in equal measure. Ashbourne Black stood before a massive screen, gesturing with animated hands as graphs, chemical structures, and swirling images of ice cream flavors flickered behind him. "The idea is simple," Ashbourne explained with a grin. "Each flavor isn't just about taste, it's about chemistry. Different base compounds result in different freezing points. So what if we could calibrate each flavor, each scoop, to have its optimal texture, density, and chill factor? Imagine an ice cream factory that doesn't mass-produce blandness but perfects each flavor like a unique masterpiece." The room was silent. Eyes flicked to the screen and then back to Ashbourne. It was outlandish. It was complex. It was compelling. Ashbourne continued, "Think of it as culinary cryogenics. Taste meets temperature, science meets satisfaction." Victor's fingers tightened slightly around his pen. He had once tried to freeze the world for love. Now, he was listening to a man pitch the idea of freezing flavors for joy. And yet, something about it struck a chord. Ashbourne wasn't joking. This wasn't a vanity project. It was serious. Soon, a team was assembled. A factory followed, equipped with the best equipment, tailored for the delicate balance of flavor and freeze. Each flavor became a challenge of its own, and Victor found himself obsessing over the precise moment chocolate hazelnut reached its ideal form, soft enough to melt on the tongue, cold enough to refresh the soul. He looked up at Ashbourne, who was watching the group with a calm smile. This man was insane, Victor thought, but also a genius. The ice cream idea was ridiculous, and he would dedicate his life to perfecting it. Victor's eyes burned with a cold passion, and he wasn't alone. Around the room, each member, scientists, chefs, and engineers had the same hooked expression. Ashbourne saw it and nodded to himself. Good. They were in. Later, Ashbourne walked through the corridors of his facility, returning to his office when Rex, his assistant, stepped in his path. "You've got guests inside," two superheroes in blue and red, Rex said plainly. Ashbourne simply nodded. He already knew that his office had visitors. He pushed open the door and saw Superman and Supergirl sitting across from his desk. Supergirl offered a friendly wave, while Superman gave him a polite but firm nod. "My humble office is honored," Ashbourne said smoothly, walking in without breaking stride. "Hope I didn't keep you waiting long." "Not at all," Superman replied. "We arrived not long ago." Ashbourne moved behind his desk and sat, leaning back comfortably. "So, what brings Earth's mightiest to my humble and simple office?" Superman's expression turned serious. "It's about your visit to Gotham last week." Ashbourne tilted his head. "What about it?" "It's come to our attention," Superman said, voice steady, "that you discovered Batgirl's identity." Ashbourne gave a casual shrug. "She came to me the next morning pretending we'd never met. Introduced herself like we hadn't spoken the night before. Honestly, that was surprisingly stupid. I figured it out instantly." Supergirl bit back a laugh. Superman frowned. "Not everyone can deduce that so easily. You know how important it is that we protect our identities. If the wrong people find out." Ashbourne's eyes drifted toward his monitor, clearly bored. Yeah. Look, I don't care about your identities, your secrets, or your missions. I have no reason to expose her. She's not my problem." Superman nodded slowly, choosing not to press further. "Good. Because Batman doesn't want to see your face in Gotham. Not after what happened." Ashbourne's brow arched. "That's cute. But no can do. In fact, I plan to visit the Joker sometime in the future." That made Superman pause. "Why would you want to visit a deranged criminal like the Joker?" Ashbourne smiled. "He has an impressive dagger collection. First, a blade made of kryptonite. Then a 15th century royal dagger like the ones you see in museums. Who knows what he'll acquire next? I like collecting, you see." Supergirl burst into a laugh, clearly amused. Superman's face was a mix of confusion and frustration. "The Joker is dangerous." Ashbourne opened a drawer and nonchalantly pulled out a small handgun, spinning it lazily. "So am I." Superman spoke awkwardly. "Batman won't be happy to see you with a gun in hand again, especially with the Joker around." Ashbourne rolled his eyes, the movement slow and exaggerated, as if the conversation was beginning to bore him. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled with a relaxed arrogance. "I don't answer to him," he said coolly. "And if he doesn't want to see reason, I can always threaten him. He's not the only one who knows how to scare people into doing what he wants." Superman's demeanor changed instantly. The easy calm in his posture evaporated, replaced with stern intensity. "Batgirl's identity remains a secret," he said, his voice low and firm. "You can't put her in danger for petty play or a joke." Ashbourne raised a brow, amused. "When did I say anything about her? She has nothing to do with this." His tone was smooth, but there was a flicker of amusement in his eyes. He enjoyed poking at their nerves. Superman narrowed his eyes. "Then how are you going to threaten Batman?" Ashbourne shrugged like it was no big deal. "I could just say, 'Hey, step away or the whole world knows you're Bruce Wayne.' That should work. Right?" The words hit like a thunderclap. Superman and Supergirl both froze, stunned. "How and since when?" Superman's voice was tight, demanding. Ashbourne smiled faintly. Since I first saw him during the Joker attack, he said. Honestly, it baffles me how no one figured it out yet. Same body build. Batman is obviously filthy rich. And a quick look at public appearances shows that Bruce Wayne and Batman appeared in Gotham at the same time. You people seriously need better cover stories. Supergirl's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Superman remained still, absorbing the weight of the revelation. Ashbourne leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the desk. Also, he added, I spent 5 minutes checking the hostage footage. Bruce Wayne conveniently snuck away instead of leaving the building. And not long after, Batman showed up. Kind of obvious. No? To add another evidence, Bruce Wayne left Metropolis the same night before even completing his public goal from the visit. We didn't even talk about the project. Obviously, he was here for something else, maybe following his boyfriend. Superman's jaw clenched. Bruce had been exposed for months, and no one knew. Who did you tell? He asked quietly, with the weight of the world in his voice. Ashbourne gave him a flat look. Why would I tell anyone? He said plainly. I do have other things to do besides ruining the lives of caped people. Contrary to popular stereotypes, I don't rise on the top of the ruined people, nor do I enjoy humiliating the poor. Then, with another eye roll, he added honestly, why do I feel like you want me to join Lex's club? You barely handle him. Me joining would be, well, unfair. Superman tensed. The thought lingered. The last thing they needed was another Lex Luthor, or worse, a more capable one, someone they couldn't predict. Ashbourne's behavior was chaotic, his motives scattered. His smile always present made it impossible to figure out his real emotions. And that was what made him dangerous. Supergirl, sensing the tightness in the air, stepped in. He's done nothing wrong, she said gently. He helped people. He cured Mr. Freeze and his wife. He even confronted the Joker in the first place to keep them safe. He didn't have to, but he did. He is just a little weirdo. You were doing well till the last sentence, Ashbourne commented, but he was ignored by both. Superman sighed. He looked down for a moment, then back at Ashbourne. I don't want us on opposite sides. Please, don't tell anyone about Batman or Batgirl. Ashbourne gave a simple nod. No worries, he said. My motto is always to make friends, if possible. Superman stood up, preparing to leave. As he turned toward the window, his eyes flicked toward it for just a second too long. Ashbourne grinned. At least you entered through the door this time. He raised a hand and waved him forward, like inviting a guest into his home. Superman stood awkwardly for a moment. Supergirl, unable to help herself, laughed. With a final nod, the two heroes stepped toward the open window and took flight, vanishing into the clouds above. Ashbourne moved behind them, casually shutting the window. Raven sat in her room, her gaze unfocused as she stared at the dim glow of a floating crystal. Her birthday was approaching, and with it came a deepening anxiety that coiled around her like a tightening vine. What if this is the year? What if this is when he finally comes? Her father's presence, Trigon, the interdimensional demon lord, had always loomed over her life like a shadow that refused to fade. She pressed her fingers together, silently chanting a mantra of calm, but it barely helped. She wanted to tell the others. But what could she say? Hey guys, my father might show up on my birthday and kill everyone. Oh, and by the way, he can't be stopped because he's literally a god-tier demon. Her lips curled into a grim, humorless smile. Even if she said it, what could they do? No shield, no sword, no team, not even the Justice League, could stop him. And if he came, she would be the doorway. With a quiet breath, Raven left her room and floated into the common room. The mood was a stark contrast to her inner turmoil. Cyborg and Beast Boy were doubled over with laughter, their cackles bouncing off the walls. Robin, sitting nearby with a hand on his forehead, looked like he was already regretting being part of the conversation. It's not that funny, Robin groaned, though the faint flush in his cheeks betrayed his embarrassment. Oh, it's hilarious, Cyborg replied between laughs. This is Batman we're talking about. All serious, all intimidating, taken down in the most ridiculous way. And it's the second time. Yeah. Beast Boy added with a grin. And it's the same duo again, Ashbourne and the Joker. You gotta admit, Ashbourne's nerve is something else. He, a normal person, faced off against the Joker and Harley Quinn like he was asking for directions to a cafe. That's wild. Robin sighed, but nodded reluctantly. It was impressive. Raven's eyes narrowed slightly, her gaze distant. A normal person? That darkness she always felt around Ashbourne. It was subtle, not like her father's, but present. Like a quiet echo in the back of her mind. She had no proof, no explanation. Just a feeling. What if he was like her? Half demon? Or something close? A being torn between worlds, trying to carve out his own place among humans? The idea stuck with her longer than it should have. Maybe he'd understand what she was going through. Maybe he could offer advice, or just listen. Then, as quickly as the thought came, she squashed it. No. No, she couldn't risk it. Trust was dangerous. He was unpredictable, unreadable, maybe helpful, but he was no friend or trustworthy person. Starfire, who had been sitting cross-legged near the window, tilted her head toward Robin. "Friend Robin," she asked softly, "do you know why Ashbourne was in Gotham to begin with?" Robin glanced at her. He went there to help Mr. Freeze's wife. Apparently, he managed to reverse Mr. Freeze's condition and make him a normal human again. Cyborg blinked. Wait, how did he pull that off? According to Supergirl, Robin replied, he got his hands on some kind of magical potion that can heal illnesses. He used it to cure both Mr. Freeze and his wife. Now Freeze works for him. Beast Boy scratched his head. That's actually pretty sweet. First he helps the Hive group turn their lives around. Now this? He's definitely a good guy. Just a little strange. Robin folded his arms, unconvinced. Maybe, but no one really knows what's going on inside that guy's head. Raven remained silent as she watched the others. Her eyes trailed to the floor, thoughts churning like storm clouds behind her calm facade. Ashbourne was a mystery. So was her future. And time was running out. The city lights shimmered dimly beyond the office windows, casting faint reflections on the polished floor. The night was quiet. Ashbourne sat at his desk, half reclined in his chair, eyes flicking over lines of code and graphs with disinterest. His phone buzzed. A message. "Jinx, will you come tonight? It's been weeks." Ashbourne exhaled, long and quiet. His fingers hovered over the screen for a second before typing, "busy." He set the phone face down on the desk. In truth, he wasn't busy at all. He just didn't want to go. Jinx was getting attached. Too attached. He had assumed, wrongly, that she would eventually lose interest, like most people did. But she hadn't. And now, there was a conversation waiting to happen. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting silence return. A pulse of energy crackled in front of his desk, light bending into an oval shape before blooming into a full portal. He opened his eyes as a familiar figure stepped through the veil. Raven. Ashbourne arched a brow. "You opened a portal to the wrong place." Raven's violet eyes scanned the room, but then settled on him with clarity. "No. I'm looking for you." That actually caught him off guard. "Why?" he asked, genuinely confused. He had no ties to her or her team. No reason for her to come here. Raven hesitated, then took a breath. "Are you a half-demon, as well?" Ashbourne blinked. Then he chuckled softly. "No, I'm not. What makes you think I am?" "I can feel it," Raven replied. "There's something different about you. A boundless darkness. Like a void. Similar to demons. But not exactly. It is calmer and much deeper." His gaze sharpened slightly. The faintest chill slipped into the air, just enough to make Raven stiffen involuntarily. Then it was gone, like a shadow slipping behind the light. Ashbourne's smile returned. "That's interesting. You're the first person to notice. But no, I'm no demon, and I've got no relation to them." Raven stepped back instinctively, wary now. The feeling just now was not her imagination. Ashbourne stood, leisurely. Her eyes began to glow as she raised her guard. But Ashbourne merely smiled, amused. With a subtle flick of his fingers, Ruler's authority flared to life. Raven's body froze, muscles locked, magic halted. Her breath caught in her throat as an invisible force drew her toward him. "Now," he said, tone casual but sharp, "why are you really here?" Raven floated helplessly before him. She hated this. Being powerless, vulnerable. "You can't kill me," she said, trying to hold firm. Ashbourne tilted his head. "And why's that?" "For the same reason I came to you." He didn't respond, just waited in silence. Raven swallowed hard and began to speak. She told him everything. Who she was. Who her father was. The hellish destiny that hung over her head. The fear that this birthday, just days away, might be the one. And how powerless she felt in the face of it all. Ashbourne didn't interrupt once. He just listened, arms crossed, expression unreadable. When she finished, there was a stillness between them. "I still don't know why you came to me," Ashbourne said at last. Raven lowered her gaze. "I thought, maybe you were like me. Someone half-demon, trying to live peacefully among humans. I thought maybe you'd understand. Or have advice." The hold on her vanished. Raven stumbled a bit, catching her balance. Ashbourne turned away from her and walked back to his desk. "You don't need to worry too much about Trigon," he said over his shoulder. "The world will be safe." He sat down, gaze fixed on his monitor. "No one hears about me," he added flatly. "If you so much as speak a word, I'll know. And trust me, it won't be a nice day for you." Raven's eyes drifted downward and she noticed the shadow beneath her feet twist unnaturally, slithering as if alive. She shivered. "I haven't told anyone," she said quietly. "And I won't. Your secret is safe." Ashbourne gave a small nod, eyes still locked on his screen. Raven didn't wait. She turned, opened a portal of her own, and disappeared. Silence returned once more. Ashbourne leaned back in his chair, resting his chin in his hand. Trigon. He had honestly forgotten about that particular demon. A being of immense power. A destroyer of worlds. And in this world, the plan was to leave that threat in the hands of a teenage girl still struggling with her own emotions. He sighed. Depending on luck and hoping to have a winning Raven in this world. Now that's just sloppy. His eyes glowed softly with an eerie, deep purple light. He had made up his mind. Raven's breath caught in her throat. One moment, she had been meditating in her room, eyes closed, trying to calm the storm within her. The next, she stood in a world of endless void, no light, no ground, no stars. Just pure, suffocating darkness. The kind that felt alive. She looked around, disoriented. Then came a voice. Low, guttural, yet familiar. "Raven, my daughter." She turned swiftly, her heart leaping to her throat. There, before her, knelt a giant, one she knew all too well. Trigon. The demon lord, her father, the being whose presence had haunted her since birth. But this was not the terrifying godlike form she had braced herself to someday face. This Trigon was broken. Black chains wrapped tightly around his enormous limbs, glowing with runes that shimmered with a purple ominous light. Enormous spears thick as the greatest trees and forged of something darker than obsidian, pierced his chest, shoulders, and back. Blood like liquid fire oozed down from his wounds. And yet, he still managed a twisted smile. "I never thought you'd be so ruthless to your own father," he rasped, voice weak, echoing in the void. "To think you'd ask a monster like that to come after me." Raven's mouth opened, but no words came out. "You are truly my daughter," Trigon chuckled, a hollow, pained sound. "And I'm proud of you." Before she could say anything, before she could even comprehend, the darkness surged. It swallowed her whole. Everything collapsed inward like a vacuum of existence. And she gasped. Her eyes flew open. She was back. Sitting in her room, cross-legged on the floor, her candle still flickering faintly. Her hands were trembling. Sweat clung to her forehead. But something inside her had changed. The connection to her father was gone. Not faded. Not weakened. Severed. She couldn't feel him anymore, couldn't sense the evil presence always lingering just at the edge of her mind. It was as though Trigon had been erased from her soul. She wasn't bound anymore. But Raven didn't feel free. She felt terrified. She knew who was responsible. Ashbourne. He had gone after Trigon. Not just threatened him, not just fought him. He had chained him, pierced him, and silenced him in whatever realm the demon lord had been banished to. Raven slowly looked down. Her room was dim, peaceful, but beneath her, her shadow twisted. It moved unnaturally, curling inward like smoke pulled by unseen wind. It danced along the ground in a rhythm she didn't recognize. Her heart pounded. Ashbourne was scarier than her father. Not just in power, in intent, in silence. Raven hugged her arms around herself, trying to breathe. Her world had just changed, not because Trigon was coming, but because now she knew a much greater monster was watching from the dark. Ashbourne sat silently in the living area, the warm lighting doing little to ease the cold stillness between him and the young woman sitting across from him. Jinx had a look on her face that was caught somewhere between shock and sorrow, her pink eyes wide but dimmed. Ashbourne's expression, however, was unreadable, neutral, calm, detached. His words had been straightforward. There was no sugarcoating, no false kindness. "You've changed," he had told her, "and that's fine. But our relationship hasn't changed, at least not for me." There was no malice in his voice, no anger, just facts. And that, somehow, made it sting worse. Jinx sat there for a few more seconds, her hands clenched together in her lap. His words echoed in her head, bouncing against the walls of her chest like a cruel truth. She had hoped. Maybe something more had grown between them. That maybe he saw her differently now. But Ashbourne, as always, was painfully clear. She lowered her head. "I understand," she said quietly. "Sorry for the inconvenience." Without another word, she stood and walked away, her footsteps soft but weighted with the kind of hurt that lingered. Ashbourne didn't move. He just watched her leave. He knew what he said had hurt her. He wasn't blind to emotions, just unwilling to lie to them. Pretending things were fine would have been worse. He didn't feel affection for her. That was the truth. Later that evening, Gizmo had called him. "Hey," Gizmo's voice crackled through. "What's going on with Jinx? She just called me out of nowhere saying she's going back to Jump City. Said this place doesn't suit her." Ashbourne leaned back in his seat, his tone calm. "She's right. Staying in a house all day doesn't suit her. She's looking for something else." There was a pause on the other end. "So, that's it? There's nothing else she can do?" Ashbourne said plainly. "Even if I gave her something else to do, she'd know it wasn't earned. And she wouldn't take it again." Gizmo sighed. "Yeah, that sounds like her." Neither of them spoke for a moment. Finally, Gizmo grunted. "All right. I'll keep in touch with her." "Thanks," Ashbourne replied simply before ending the call. He sat still again, staring at the darkened window across the room. He hadn't kicked her out. He hadn't said she needed to go. But after their conversation, he knew she wouldn't stay. Because she knew. There was no path forward from where they stood. Jinx's departure barely left a ripple in Ashbourne's daily routine. The house was back to being empty and life moved at its usual, steady rhythm. The pace of his work remained undisturbed. No emotional fallout. No drama. Just the same cycle of research, planning, and the occasional small indulgements. That was, until he received an unexpected call. Amanda Waller. The name alone was enough to catch his interest. A high-level government agent with her fingers in more pies than anyone cared to admit. Ruthless, calculated, and always 3 moves ahead. She requested a meeting. No details given, just a direct and formal request for his time to discuss an important matter. Naturally, he agreed. The next day, a sleek black car pulled up in front of Shadow Corp's gates. No markings, no identifiers. Just clean, polished, and clearly government-issued. Ashbourne stepped in without a word. The drive was long and uneventful. When they arrived, he was escorted through several layers of security into a nondescript government facility. But instead of being taken to an office or a briefing room, he was led deep underground, far below the surface, to what felt more like a bunker than a meeting space. The room was cold, sterile, and built like a vault. Waiting inside was a stern-looking black woman whose very presence radiated command. Amanda Waller. Ashbourne greeted her with a casual smile, settling into the chair across from her. "Not every day a government agent calls me in for a chat." Amanda nodded in acknowledgement. Thank you for making time for me on such short notice. He leaned back slightly. So what's this all about? Dragging me into an underground fortress? You worried about someone going to eavesdrop? Amanda's expression didn't change. Precisely. This room is constructed to prevent any and all forms of external surveillance, alien or otherwise. Superman, Martian Manhunter, telepaths, tech-based spies. None of them can hear what we're about to discuss. Now she had his full attention. Ashbourne folded his hands on the table. All right. I'm listening. Amanda slid a collection of folders across the table. Look through these first. He opened them and flipped through quickly. Reports of large-scale destruction, civilian casualties, massive insurance claims, global instability. Metropolis, Gotham, Central City, all bearing the scars of battles between gods and monsters and sometimes between the supposed heroes themselves. He looked back at her, silently prompting her to continue. Our world is more fragile than it looks, Amanda said. Brainiac's invasion proved how ill-prepared we are. If he hadn't been stopped, we would have been erased. And the Justice League? They're powerful, unregulated, and completely untouchable. If they ever decide to rule the world, who would stop them? Who could? Ashbourne hummed. So where do I fit into all of this? You've been busy, she said. You sued Supergirl and forced her into a public accountability arc. You helped known villains reform. It shows something important. You care about this society. You care about humanity. You want to preserve it, not control it. Ashbourne raised an eyebrow, then gave a sly smile. Is this your way of recruiting me? Amanda's voice was firm. I'm assembling a covert division, designed to prepare for the worst. Alien invasions. Rogue heroes. Threats beyond our reach. I want you to support it. He didn't answer right away. Instead, Ashbourne leaned back, thoughtful. Did I just become the Lex Luthor of this world? He mused. It was an amusing thought. After a pause, he said aloud, You are afraid of the League and that's reasonable. But giving people too much power, even for defense, is a double-edged sword. Recipe for disaster. This division will be overseen by government protocols, Amanda argued. It won't be run by one person. Every major action will require approval from multiple layers. We're not looking for tyranny. Ashbourne tilted his head. Sounds familiar. Justice League does that too. Except they've been doing it longer. Her frown deepened. We're human. They're aliens. Don't you think it's absurd that we've put our entire species' safety in the hands of beings from other worlds? He shrugged. Humans aren't exactly peaceful or trustworthy either. But I see your point. He glanced at the file again, then met her gaze. What do you want from me, specifically? Funding, she said without hesitation. And access to your lab's research. No interference. Just results that could help us defend against extraterrestrial or metahuman threats. Ashbourne narrowed his eyes slightly, thinking it over. I will support you, he said at last. But I expect a detailed report on the protocols you follow and assurance of no abuse. The moment your group breaks any of them, I will turn on you. Amanda nodded once. Agreed. Then, Ashbourne leaned forward, his smile returning, but this time with something sharper behind it. Tell me, is Lex Luthor part of this too? That caught her off guard. For a fraction of a second, her expression slipped. Why would you think that? Because Lex is the loudest critic of the League. And he's richer than me. If you offer him a way to oppose Superman and look noble doing it, he'll empty his pockets. Amanda studied him closely. Then she gave a slow nod. You're right. He's already involved. In fact, he was the one who told me to reach out to you. She gave a small smirk. Said you like to make friends. Ashbourne chuckled softly. Lex knows me well. The ride back to Shadow Corp was quiet, filled with little more than the low hum of the engine and Ashbourne's thoughts. His decision to support Amanda Waller wasn't weighed down by morality or trust, it was strategy. Cold and simple. The world was a stage, and everyone was playing a part. Supporting Amanda Waller's division had been an easy choice. If the Justice League ever went rogue, if Superman decided humanity's chaos required his guidance, If Wonder Woman chose to enforce peace by the sword, then Amanda's team could, in theory, stand as a countermeasure. Something to balance the scale. On the other hand, if Amanda's group lost its way, corrupted by its own sense of righteousness or consumed by paranoia and power, the League could crush them. He knew how they operated. They wouldn't ignore tyranny in their backyard. And if both groups failed? If the worst happened? If power clashed with power and the world teetered on the edge of collapse? If it came to it, he would step in. To correct them. To stop the destruction of the life around him. He wasn't a hero. Not a savior. Not someone who craved glory or wanted a statue in his name. He just wanted to enjoy life, and any real threat to that will be dealt with. Ashbourne blinked once. Good morning, Kara. He walked to his desk and took his seat. Why are you here this early? Kara gave a half shrug. Can't I just visit a friend? Ashbourne tilted his head slightly. You don't usually drop by without a reason. Kara rolled her eyes with a smile. You really lack proper hospitality. You know that. Without a word, Ashbourne tapped a button on his desk. Uncle Rex, send up a mix of snacks and beverages. Get a variety. Kara laughed. Now that's more like it. Ashbourne leaned back in his chair. How's life treating you these days? Kara stretched her arms. Oh, you know. Fighting crime, saving cats from trees, standard hero stuff. She smirked. And by the way, you really ought to be grateful to me. Ashbourne raised a brow. Why? Because, Kara said, voice laced with amusement. After Batman found out you knew who he was, he wanted to come have a little chat. And guess who else wanted to tag along? Wonder Woman. She grinned. I talked Kal-El into stopping them and even vouched for you. Imagine that awkward visit. Ashbourne chuckled softly. Then thank you, Kara. Though I would have welcomed Batman with open arms. Maybe even invited his beloved, the Joker, for the occasion. Kara snorted. He'd probably cancel the visit on the spot if he knew the Joker and you were in the same room. A knock at the door interrupted them, and Rex entered alongside another employee, both carrying trays stacked with a colorful array of snacks and drinks. They placed everything carefully on the low table between the two chairs. Thanks, Uncle Rex, Ashbourne said. Kara grinned. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Rex. Rex gave a small nod and shuffled out with the other employee, leaving the two alone once more. Kara popped a chip into her mouth and gestured at the room. So, what do you do around here for fun? Ashbourne gave her a pointed look. Is that really why you're here? Bored out of your mind? She laughed but didn't deny it. He exhaled lightly through his nose. Why not go out with other heroines your age? You know Batgirl, and you can invite Raven and Starfire. Call it a Heroines of Earth night out or something. Kara blinked. Hey, that actually sounds fun. I only really know Batgirl personally, though. Ashbourne waved a hand. Invite them anyway. Starfire loves making new friends, and she'll make sure Raven shows up. It won't be awkward. Kara leaned back thoughtfully. I like that. I'll try it. Thanks for the idea. She paused, then tilted her head slightly. And what about you? What? Before she could finish, her communicator buzzed. A distress signal. Duty called. Kara stood up, brushing crumbs from her lap. Ashbourne simply pointed toward the window without looking up. Be my guest. She grinned. With a laugh and a gust of wind, she launched into the sky. Ashbourne turned back to his desk, eyes glancing at the window, and thought, I should automate that. The sun had dipped below the skyline of Metropolis, casting golden hues across the city as its usual hustle began to settle into evening calm. Inside a cozy, corner cafe of the main street, Ashbourne stepped through the door, greeted by the familiar scent of roasted beans and faint jazz music playing in the background. He moved with his usual composed grace to the counter, ordered his usual, and waited. But as he glanced up at the television mounted in the corner, his expression subtly shifted. The broadcast was anything but ordinary. Grainy footage showed a towering figure of muscle and bone, a monstrous creature rampaging through the heart of a city, leaving destruction in its wake. Its bony protrusions were slick with blood, and its roars silent screams with primal terror. The name wasn't spoken, but Ashbourne already knew. Doomsday. The screen's ticker ran updates in bold red. The Justice League had been battling the creature for hours. And still, it stood. Still, it killed. The scene cut to Supergirl, her suit torn, one eye swollen, struggling to lift a staggering Superman. Both looked barely conscious. Wonder Woman stood several feet away, sword cracked and arm bleeding, chest heaving with exhaustion. Smoke and fire lit the background like a war zone. The anchor's voice trembled slightly as she reported, "Several League members have been evacuated due to critical injuries. The monster continues its rampage." Ashbourne's eyes narrowed as he sipped his drink, unbothered by the rising panic filling the cafe. People were glued to the screen, whispering, horrified. All the heavy hitters were down. And yet Doomsday remained unscathed. Interesting, Ashbourne thought. Is this world's Doomsday stronger? Or is the Justice League simply weaker than their counterparts elsewhere? His curiosity flared, but not his concern. With a calm nod to the barista, Ashbourne took his coffee cup and turned, walking out into the cool evening air as if he hadn't just witnessed the near collapse of Earth's most powerful defense force. As he walked, his eyes shimmered, just for a moment, glowing faintly. Behind him, unnoticed by all, his shadow warped unnaturally. A piece of it peeled off, slithering away silently, racing through alleyways and streets, unseen by all. It moved with purpose, speeding toward the chaos miles away. Ashbourne sipped from his cup, his stride relaxed. The battlefield was silent save for the crumbling buildings and distant sirens echoing through the devastated streets. The sky above was darkened, not by clouds, but by smoke, debris, and exhaustion. Wonder Woman stood tall despite the searing pain in her side, her shield long gone, her sword chipped, and her breathing labored. She glanced to her side where Superman knelt, arm around Supergirl as she helped him stay upright. "Any idea how to stop that monster?" she asked, voice tight with strain. Superman gritted his teeth, gaze locked on the rampaging beast in the distance. "We have to keep hitting it, until it goes down." He then turned to Kara, his voice firmer, "Kara, leave." But Supergirl didn't move. Her body ached, her cape was torn, her lip was split, but her eyes burned with defiance. "I'm not leaving you alone with that thing." A crimson blur zipped beside them, and the Flash came to a halt. His suit was scorched and torn, streaks of blood painting his arms and legs, but he was still standing. "Everyone in a few dozen blocks is evacuated," Flash reported, panting. "There will be no more casualties for now." "Good," Superman nodded, still catching his breath. Flash looked at the others, then back toward the looming monster tearing through yet another skyscraper in the distance. "But do we have a plan to stop that thing?" Superman shook his head. "Just keep hitting it." Supergirl, eyes narrowed with frustration, offered, "What if we try to fling it into space? It can't fly. We could trap it up there." Superman gave a small, humorless smile. "It's not going to let us do that. And even if it did, it can come back. Again." "I'll try binding it," Wonder Woman interjected, gripping her lasso of truth with what little strength she had left. "You three, hit it with everything you've got. I refuse to believe that thing can't go down." The others nodded. Their bodies screamed in protest, but none hesitated. They pushed forward, blooded yet determined, toward the creature that had nearly shattered them all. Doomsday turned, sensing the approach of his enemies. The ground trembled beneath his massive steps. He roared, a deafening, bone-chilling sound that shook the broken city. And then something unexpected happened. From the broken asphalt between Doomsday and the advancing heroes, a ripple of darkness surged like a living wave. Shadows laced with glowing threads of blue light began to rise, coiling and dancing like flames caught in a midnight breeze. The League members stopped in their tracks, eyes wide with confusion and wariness. Doomsday too paused, its crimson eyes locking onto the shadows with animalistic curiosity. From within the swirling vortex of shadow and light, a figure emerged, a knight, unlike any they had seen. Towering in stature and draped in jet-black armor that shimmered with otherworldly metal, the being's presence was commanding. A tattered black cape flowed from his shoulders, and a single long red ornament extended like a manet from the back of his helmet. His body radiated calm, cold power. It was the Shadow Marshal, Igris. Without a word, Doomsday bellowed in fury and charged. The earth cracked beneath his feet as he lunged toward Igris, fist raised with the force to obliterate anything in its path. But Igris stood unmoved. Calmly, he extended a single armored hand and caught the punch. The impact sent a shockwave in all directions, but Igris didn't even flinch. Then, with a swift motion, he twisted Doomsday's arm and flung the beast over his shoulder, sending it crashing through the remains of a building with thunderous force. The League gasped in disbelief. Igris turned toward the fallen creature as it struggled to rise. In one smooth motion, he drew his sword, a glowing blade of pure azure energy, laced with bolts of crackling electricity. He walked slowly, like a predator closing in. Doomsday roared again and charged. Igris sidestepped. A flash of blue. In a single fluid sequence, Igris sliced through Doomsday's arm, then spun and cut off one of its legs, followed by the other arm and then the final leg. The beast screamed and collapsed, flailing in the rubble, limbs severed and body broken. Without hesitation, Igris drove his sword through Doomsday's skull, ending the rampage in one, final, merciful strike. Silence fell over the city once more. The League could only stare, awestruck, wounded, and utterly stunned. The monster that had nearly brought them to ruin was felled in mere moments. Igris turned to glance at them. No words, no acknowledgement, then his cape began to ripple unnaturally. It expanded, growing into a vast shadow that enveloped his armored frame and Doomsday's corpse together. The darkness swallowed them whole. And then, both knight and beast vanished, sinking into the earth like ghosts fading from a dream. The wind whispered through the broken remains of the city. No one spoke. Far away in Ashbourne's home, Igris and the shadow of Doomsday were bowing to their king. The Justice League of this world is weak. The world stood still. Across every city, every channel, every screen, the footage looped endlessly, grainy yet clear enough to strike awe into the hearts of billions. A black armored knight, emerging from shadow like a silent executioner, had brought down Doomsday, the unstoppable monster that had nearly ended a city and their protectors with swift, merciless slashes. He had come like a myth, slain a godlike terror, and vanished without a word. The world's greatest defenders, the Justice League, had fallen to their knees, and when all hope seemed lost, he appeared. A dark knight, a ghost, a mystery. No one knew his name. No one knew where he came from. And worst of all, no one knew where he went. In newsrooms and media outlets around the globe, the same questions were asked over and over again. Who was the Black Knight? Where did he come from? Why did he disappear? On-screen analysts speculated endlessly, some calling it a deliberate intervention, a powerful being who stepped in only after witnessing the League's failure. Others theorized he was a collector of monsters, that perhaps the monster was a creation gone rogue and this was merely the cleanup. Another group posited that the knight bore a personal grudge, a vendetta against the beast, and left as soon as vengeance was served. Theories flooded the internet. Artists reimagined the knight in stylized fan art. Conspiracy channels declared this the start of a new age, some even whispering that he was a god from the Shadow Realm, sent to correct balance. But amidst all the noise, no facts emerged. The Justice League remained silent. Their faces, battered and healing, appeared only briefly to reassure the public that Earth was safe once more. But when asked about the mysterious knight, every member gave the same response: we don't know. They hadn't seen him arrive. They didn't know his name. They didn't understand his power. He was a phantom on the battlefield, more powerful than any of them, and gone before they could even speak. And that scared them more than anything. Was he a savior? Or something else? In the shadowed halls of black-budget facilities and fortified bunkers, the whispers were louder, sharper. Amanda Waller's expression was unreadable as the footage looped again on the massive monitor in front of her. Her fingers tapped against the armrest of her chair, slow and deliberate. He took out that monster in under a minute, an agent said, not even trying to hide the awe in his voice. Which makes him an unstable factor, and possibly more dangerous than the League. Waller replied coldly. The room fell silent. A being possibly more powerful than Superman, an unknown variable, was now part of the equation. No one knew which side that knight was on, and if it were to join the League, it would make it a much greater threat. That was a future Amanda Waller refused to face unprepared. Even in Titan Tower, the mood had shifted. Footage of the knight played in the background while the younger heroes sat in a circle, debating. He's definitely not a hero, Beast Boy argued. He didn't even say anything. Just showed up, killed the monster, and bounced. That's creepy. Or he's just efficient, Robin said thoughtfully. No ego, no theatrics. Just did the job. I don't know. Starfire said slowly. His entrance was cool but scary and unnatural. Robin grunted. If he wanted to harm the League, he could have. They were weakened and injured, and that kind of power, it's scary. Through the chatter, Raven remained quiet. She watched the footage one last time, eyes narrowing slightly at the way the shadows danced around the night. The cape that devoured the beast and vanished into the ground. She had seen that kind of shadow magic before, felt its weight, sensed its depth. Her gaze shifted to her shadow. She didn't speak, but she knew. No one else in this world possessed that kind of connection to the darkness. Ashbourne. He hadn't said a word. He hadn't shown himself. But Raven felt it in her bones. That night, that being who commanded death and shadow like a silent king, he was tied to Ashbourne. And her shadow knew she knew. It was watching her. Listening. Waiting. So she said nothing. She didn't dare to. Ashbourne sat quietly at his desk. Across from him, lounging comfortably in the chair like it was a living room, was Kara. She was dressed in civilian clothes, simple jeans, and a hoodie, and was currently devouring the snack tray in front of her like someone who hadn't eaten in days. You're bored again, Ashbourne stated, not even looking up from the file in his hand. Kara didn't stop chewing. You didn't call to check on me, even though you definitely saw the news and saw how we were absolutely wrecked by Doomsday. She paused for a moment, then continued, That's the name we decided to give the monster, she explained between bites. It seemed fitting. He nodded lightly. You looked fine in the footage. A bit roughed up, but breathing. And it's not like you've given me a phone number to call. Kara rolled her eyes. Excuses. Lame ones. You have no idea how horrible it was, fighting that thing. Ashbourne leaned back slightly, studying her. I'm sure it was unpleasant. Unpleasant, she repeated in disbelief. If that Black Knight hadn't shown up, we might have all died. That guy's power. It was unreal. You could feel it. He didn't just beat Doomsday, he destroyed him. There was this air around him. Like the world itself respected him or something. Yes, Ashbourne said evenly, I can imagine that. Kara shook her head. No, you can't. Not unless you were there. It's hard to explain, but when he stood there, it was like reality bent around him. Ashbourne shrugged. If you say so. She narrowed her eyes at him. Then after a moment, her expression softened as she leaned back in her chair. You know, last time we talked, I didn't get to finish asking. What do you do for fun? Ashbourne glanced at her. Working. Eating. Watching movies. Playing video games. Kara gave him a flat look. So basically, you enjoy breathing. I enjoy the small things, he replied without missing a beat. The slow process of life. She groaned, throwing her head back dramatically. You sound like a monk. He didn't respond, only watched her with mild amusement. Kara sat up suddenly, brushing the crumbs off her lap. All right then, Mr. Small Things. If you like movies, would you like to go see one with me? Ashbourne tilted his head, studying her carefully. Her tone was light, but her eyes, there was something hopeful in them. Like a date? He asked. A faint pink colored her cheeks. You can say that if you want. His gaze drifted away, focusing on the soft glow of the console behind her. No, I don't wish to do that. Kara blinked, stunned. Why not? I don't feel like getting involved with anyone for now. Her face fell, the light in her eyes dimming instantly. She stood abruptly, brushing her hands on her jeans. Right. I should go. Ashbourne didn't stop her. He simply reached under his desk and pressed a newly installed button. The large window behind him hissed softly as it opened wide, the wind fluttering into the room. Kara paused, eyes darting to the window. You installed that after my last visit. Ashbourne gave a slight nod. It's more efficient than you open it every time and me closing it after you. A small, almost wistful smile tugged at the edge of her lips. She gave a slow nod back. Right, efficient. And then, without another word, she launched into the sky, the window closing behind her as silence settled over the room once again. Ashbourne stared out at the fading light of the evening sky. Between his numbness, his funding of Cadmus, and the hero's inflated ego and righteousness, he knew any relation with Supergirl will not end well. Despite the brief sting of rejection, Supergirl recovered faster than even she expected. The moment had hurt, more than she would ever admit aloud, but she brushed it off. Still, she took Ashbourne's suggestion to heart. She needed to unwind. So she messaged Batgirl with a simple idea: girls' night. To her surprise, Barbara was all for it. It's hard to find girls our age who can talk about secret identities without getting weird, she'd replied with a laughing emoji. Let's do it. With Batgirl's help, they reached out to someone else who'd make things even more fun, Starfire. The Tamaranian was ecstatic at the idea. It shall be glorious, she had responded enthusiastically, practically radiating joy through the message. The trio decided to meet in Central City the next evening, a neutral place far from their usual patrol zones and hero business. Kara and Barbara arrived first in their civvies, Kara in a soft blue sweater and jeans, Barbara in her leather jacket and ponytail. After a short wait, a swirling portal opened just down the block. Out stepped Starfire, vibrant and beaming as always. Behind her came a less thrilled Raven, and lastly, a girl wearing sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat that barely contained her bubblegum pink hair. Hello, friends, Starfire said cheerfully, floating over to hug Kara and Barbara. You already know Raven, she gestured with a grin. And this is Jinx, the newest of the Titans. Jinx offered a small wave. Hey. The five strolled down the lively streets of Central City, blending in like any group of ordinary friends. They laughed, swapped stories about missions, mishaps, and the madness that came with saving the world on a weekly basis. Eventually, they settled into a cozy cafe tucked away near a quiet street. Drinks and desserts in hand, the conversation deepened. Batgirl leaned forward, curiosity piqued. So, Jinx, how'd you end up with the Titans? I heard from Robin you used to work with Ashbourne Black. At that, Jinx's playful smirk vanished. Her gaze dropped to her drink, fingers tracing the rim of the cup. There was a beat of silence. Seeing the change, Barbara quickly raised her hands. Hey, you don't have to answer if you don't want to. No, Jinx said quietly. It's fine. She exhaled and began, Ashbourne didn't hire me because he needed me. He only gave me a job because my friends insisted. Said we were a full package and he agreed. There was another pause. But as time went on, I started liking him. More than I should have. I thought maybe he felt the same. You know? I changed, got better, tried harder. Her lips pressed into a tight line. Then one day, he just told me. No intention of forming any bond, any relationship. Said it outright. So I left. Came back to Jump City. Eventually, I joined the Titans. Starfire reached across the table, gently taking Jinx's hand. Worry not, friend. It is his loss. Kara, who had been quiet till now, blinked. The realization hit her like a gust of cold wind. She wasn't the only one. Actually, she said, her voice soft, I asked him out too. Not long ago. The table stilled. He rejected me, she continued with a weak laugh. Said he didn't want to get involved with anyone. For sets of eyes turned toward her, blinking in disbelief. Wait, what? Barbara said, voice rising in surprise. He rejected both of you. Who the hell does he think he is? Kara laughed, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. It's fine. I talked to Superman about it. He thinks it's part of Ashbourne's past. Says when he was younger, he lost everyone. His parents, cousins, uncles. All of them. Different reasons. But same end. One after another. Now he just keeps his distance. Doesn't want to go through that pain again. Superman said that. Starfire asked, visibly saddened. Kara nodded. And Batman thinks he hides his trauma behind his smile. The group fell into silence, digesting the weight of that revelation. All except Raven, who didn't buy it. That guy doesn't carry trauma. He is the trauma. That smile of his? That's not pain. That's control. Raven thought as her eyes glanced at her shadow. She has been afraid of her own shadow for quite some time now. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Jinx smirked. Well, now I feel a little better. I am not the problem for once. The girls chuckled genuinely as the evening wore on. The crisp night air buzzed with excitement as the girls left the cafe, laughing and chatting away, their earlier confessions slowly dissolving into the rhythm of friendship. The streets of Central City were alive, neon signs flickering, cars passing with trailing music, and people milling around in unexpected clusters. It wasn't long before they noticed a particularly large crowd gathered outside a restaurant just down the block. The line stretched out the door, curling around the corner. What is happening here? Starfire asked, floating slightly above the sidewalk for a better view. Kara flagged down a man stepping out of the crowd with a box in hand. Hey, what's going on? The man grinned. This? Oh, this is Heart Attack. New restaurant in town. They sell sandwiches so overloaded with calories, they're basically a health hazard. That's why it's called Heart Attack. It's all the rage. Starfire's eyes widened. But, if it is harmful, why would one consume it willingly? Batgirl chuckled, stuffing her hands in her jacket pockets. People love testing limits. Even if it's bad for them. The danger makes it cool. Kara laughed. Maybe we should give it a try, just for the... Her words stopped abruptly, her voice catching in her throat. From between the crowd, casually stepping out with a plastic takeout bag in hand, was none other than Ashbourne. His appearance was the same as always. Black coat, relaxed gait, a distant yet a smiling expression. The bag crinkled slightly as he adjusted his grip on it. All 5 girls halted in sync. Ashbourne, too, noticed them almost instantly. His eyes flicked across the group and rested briefly on Kara, then on Jinx. So, she followed my suggestion, he mused. A girls' night out. But Jinx? He walked over without hesitation. Didn't expect to run into all of you here, he said casually, his eyes scanning the lineup. Barbara's narrowed eyes gave away her distaste. Raven's aura flared with silent tension and fear. Kara and Jinx couldn't seem to meet his gaze for more than a second, their awkwardness clear. Only Starfire beamed at him, albeit with a confused tilt to her head. Kara took the lead, trying to steady her tone. We're having a girls' night. You? Ashbourne simply turned slightly, lifting the bag and pointing toward the glowing restaurant sign behind him. Of course, Kara muttered, smirking faintly. You'd come here. His eyes then shifted to Jinx. That's quite the change in your social circle. Before Jinx could respond, Starfire stepped forward proudly. Jinx is now one of the Teen Titans. A hero, and our dear friend. Ashbourne gave a single nod. Glad you found something to do. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't cold. Just neutral. His tone had no real care behind it. There was a beat of silence between them all, an odd energy hanging heavy in the air. Jinx had unfinished words, unspoken feelings, and she couldn't say a word. Well, Ashbourne said, already turning to the side, I'll leave you girls to it. He pivoted to walk away when suddenly, the sky cracked open. A column of light, blinding, divine, and humming with bright energy, descended from the skies without warning. It engulfed them all in a heartbeat. Kara, Barbara, Starfire, Raven, Jinx, and Ashbourne. The street lights flickered. Pedestrians screamed. And in an instant, the 6 figures were gone, pulled skyward within the blazing pillar as the world around them fell back into screams and fear. No one understood what just happened. Each of the 6 kidnapped individuals stood within a cylindrical glass prison, round walls that stretched from the floor all the way to the ceiling, the material glowing faintly with an unnatural sheen. The cells were spaced evenly across a vast metallic chamber that curved out into darkness. In the distance, more glass towers housed strange creatures, some reptilian, others aquatic, some humanoid but utterly alien. The girls sprang into action. Supergirl reeled back and launched a punch at the glass with all her might, only for the strike to jolt through her hand, causing her to stumble back in pain. Her breath was short, her strength dimmed. Raven's hands lit up with magic, but as the energy gathered it fizzled out, leaving only a spark. Starfire growled and launched a blast from her eyes. Jinx followed with a crackling jolt of her signature pink energy. But the cells didn't even flicker. The blasts dissipated harmlessly, as if absorbed by the glass itself. Barbara, calm and sharp-eyed, didn't waste her energy. Instead, she examined every angle of her prison, scanning for seams, panels, or weaknesses. Across from them, Ashbourne sat cross-legged in his own glass cell, unbothered. He unwrapped the bag he was carrying and opened a greasy sandwich from Heart Attack, its scent filling his cell. The girls all paused mid-action to stare at him. "You eating now? Seriously?" Kara asked, disbelief in her voice. Ashbourne took a calm bite, then answered between chews, "We're going to be here for a while. May as well enjoy it while it's still warm." Barbara let out a sharp breath. "You are unbelievable." Ashbourne just nodded and continued eating. Ignoring him, the girls regrouped mentally and began speculating who could be behind this. Kara finally looked up and noticed the faint red glow above her. Realization dawning. "There's a red sun emitter above me. It's nullifying my powers," she said, her tone darkening. "The glass must dampen my connection to my magic," Raven murmured. Starfire frowned. "It's suppressing my Tamaranian energy too. And my mine is being drained or grounded," Jinx added. "Wonderful," Barbara muttered. "We're nerfed, kidnapped, and we have a guy who's more focused on eating." Time passed before a sudden hum filled the air. A small, floating creature approached, an alien being, barely the size of a child. It had no legs, its lower body tapering into a soft glow. Its skin was pale, and its wrinkled face betrayed the age of someone, or something, that had seen far more than just years. Its eyes were blank and dim. The creature floated toward Kara's cell. "Welcome," it said in a voice that echoed unnaturally. "Kryptonian." Kara narrowed her eyes. "Who are you? Why did you bring us here?" "I am the Preserver," the creature said proudly. "And I did not bring you here out of malice. Your kind is endangered. I have brought you here for protection, to ensure your species will not go extinct." Kara's jaw tightened, rage blooming in her chest. "I don't need your protection. And even if you believed that, why kidnap my friends too?" The Preserver turned slightly in the air. "Some species are social. They suffer in isolation. They perish without emotional stability. I brought your companions so you may thrive." Kara was speechless, trying to wrap her head around the cold logic. Starfire pressed her hands against the glass. "You are wrong. This is not kindness. This is imprisonment. And it is against our will." The Preserver floated back calmly. "Perhaps. But preservation of life and legacy is more important than the will of a single individual. That is the principle I uphold." Barbara stepped forward, her voice low and firm. "We'll find a way out of here. And when we do, you're not going to like it." The Preserver shook his head slowly. "You cannot leave. These containment units were crafted to restrain beings across the known universe. Your abilities were all considered. I made certain of it before your arrival." "The Justice League won't let this go," Kara snapped. "They'll find us." The Preserver blinked slowly. "I do not know this Justice League. But if they are from Earth, we have already left its orbit. Soon, we will depart the solar system entirely." Silence filled the chamber. Fear took root. For a second, no one spoke. No one moved. Then a crack. The sharp, piercing sound of shattering glass echoed through the chamber. All eyes whipped to the side. Ashbourne stood outside his broken cell, casually brushing off a few shards of glass from his shoulder. His expression was blank, as if this were no more bothersome than taking a stroll. The girls stared in complete shock. Kara blinked. "What or how?" Ashbourne took one last bite of his sandwich, then slowly raised his head, his voice low and calm. "I did tell you I like collecting daggers," he said, casually. "This one's a personal favorite. Enchanted to break things. Glass, stone, magical barriers. One strike, and boom." He snapped his fingers. "Gone." As he said that, he showed a red dagger still glowing faintly in his hand. The Preserver floated closer, eyeing the dagger with interest. "Fascinating weapon," he said with a soft hum. "I wasn't aware Earth held such relics." Ashbourne slipped the blade back into the inner fold of his coat. "There are a few magical artifacts down there. Just take some effort to get your hands on them." The preserver tilted its head. Then, if you'd kindly give me the weapon and please re-enter the containment cell. Before Ashbourne could answer, Kara slammed her hand against the glass. Oh, come on. Just beat up the damn alien. The other girls looked just as hopeful. The preserver didn't look threatening. He was small, legless, frail-looking. Surely, Ashbourne could take him. The preserver said calmly, I strongly advise you to not resort to violence, but Ashbourne only chuckled and stepped back, hands raised disarmingly. Relax. Let's postpone the whole cell and kidnapping topic for now. I'm actually more interested in your work, Mr. Preserver. The alien blinked. My work. Even the girls were thrown off by the sudden shift in tone. Ashbourne gestured around them, to the distant cells housing bizarre and sometimes beautiful creatures. They're all the last of their kind, aren't they? He asked. The preserver nodded proudly. Indeed. Each species lost to time or destruction. I preserve what would otherwise vanish. Then, as a guest of your fine institution, Ashbourne said smoothly, I'd like to request a tour. It would be a shame to miss the chance to learn about these wonders. Violence and arguments can wait. The preserver was silent for a long moment. Then he finally nodded. Very well. It is rare to meet someone who appreciates the value of my work. Ashbourne flashed a satisfied smile and began to follow the floating alien deeper into the chamber. Kara banged on her glass again. What about us? Ashbourne turned back briefly. We'll figure that out later. Ashbourne. Kara screamed as he disappeared around the corner. Barbara groaned and threw her arms in the air. That guy has serious mental issues. This is not a zoo. The rest of the girls were speechless. The weight of their situation returned. Hours passed. They talked to distract themselves, about plans, theories, what they'd do when they got out. Most of those conversations ended with Barbara saying, I swear, when we're free, I'm beating the shit out of that guy. Kara always agreed. Raven, watching the glass, simply muttered in an inaudible voice, It will be your funeral. Eventually, Ashbourne returned. He and the preserver chatted like old colleagues, talking about extinct Earth species, dodos, thylacines, the last white rhinos. The preserver listened with open curiosity, genuinely interested. Ashbourne looked at the girls. It was a fantastic tour, he said, his voice too innocent. Apologies, I may have momentarily forgotten about you. The burning glare from all 5 girls could have melted steel. The preserver looked at him. Your relationship with them seems strained. Ashbourne shrugged. We're not exactly close. Different lines of work. The redhead especially hates my guts. The preserver nodded thoughtfully. I apologize for bringing you here by mistake. Ashbourne waved it off. No harm done. Honestly, I consider it a happy accident. Got to see some amazing things. Kara snapped. Are you being serious right now? With a straight face, Ashbourne nodded. It's quite the impressive archive. Truly admirable work. Kara's mouth opened and closed, words failing her. The preserver floated a bit higher. We are returning to Earth. I shall send you back. Ashbourne gave a gracious nod. Thank you. Though, if I may. He turned toward Kara's cell. I don't want to undermine your efforts, but placing her here might not serve your noble goal. The preserver tilted slightly. What do you mean? Ashbourne folded his arms. There's another Kryptonian on Earth, her cousin. And if rumors are true, there are even more in the Phantom Zone, which is a Kryptonian prison. 2 of them escaped a few years back and are still out there. Plus, their planet was destroyed by Brainiac. I heard he was a collector. It is possible that he has surviving Kryptonians in captivity. The preserver went still. I did not know this. That is unexpected. I must re-evaluate. Ashbourne nodded sagely. And another thing, if Kryptonians and humans might be genetically compatible, we could be looking at the birth of a new hybrid species. She could be the start of something new, not just the end of something old. The preserver was quiet for a long time, deep in thought. Then finally, he spoke. You make a compelling case. I shall release her, to give her the chance to mate and breed a new generation. During that time, I will re-evaluate the status of her race. Ashbourne smiled. Earth's a safe place. No natural predators for her kind. Kara looked both horrified and dumbfounded. She didn't know what was worse, that Ashbourne said that, or that it actually worked. The girls stood frozen in their glass cells, their minds struggling to comprehend the scene that had just unfolded before them. They had witnessed many strange things in their lives: alien invasions, magical battles, otherworldly monsters. But this was something else entirely. Ashbourne had somehow turned a galactic kidnapping into a casual field trip. Then, without so much as a stutter, he discussed breeding with the very alien who abducted them, all with the kind of calm detachment one might have when picking out groceries. Barbara was the first to snap out of her stupor. "Are you serious right now? Are you actually serious?" She gritted her teeth and slammed her palm against the inside of her cell. "Okay, fine. Since we are going back to Earth, can we at least be released now?" Before the preserver could respond, Ashbourne casually interjected, "I would strongly advise against releasing them at this time." Barbara blinked. What are you saying?" Her voice rose in pitch. "What side are you on?" Ashbourne tilted his head like he was observing a mildly curious painting. "There's no side here, Barbara. This place is filled with endangered species. And you all, no offense, have temper issues and a tendency toward violence. I'd rather not see any of these poor creatures endangered. It's just a few more hours. You will live." Barbara's eyes went wide, and then she erupted. "Ashbourne, I swear I will beat the shit out of you when we are back." Ashbourne didn't even flinch. He simply nodded, serene as ever. "And that is exactly why I don't want you out." The preserver, who had been floating quietly beside him, added with a nod, "I will release all of you when we arrive on Earth. It is for the best." Ashbourne gave a respectful nod. "A wise decision. Oh, and I do apologize about the broken cell." The preserver waved a small hand. "No harm done." Without missing a beat, Ashbourne pulled the red dagger from his coat and held it out, handle first. "Please, take this. A gift. A small token of appreciation for the tour and your hospitality." The preserver's pale eyes lit with genuine surprise and pleasure. "How very kind of you. Thank you." The alien took the dagger reverently. And just like that, the two turned and began walking away again, chatting like old friends heading to a cafe. The 5 girls stared at the scene in mute disbelief. "I didn't know you could make friends with your kidnapper like that," Starfire said in confusion. "This is ridiculous," Raven said. The others nodded. Time passed. Eventually, Ashbourne and the preserver returned, smiling and exchanging tales as if they had just finished a delightful brunch. The preserver floated forward, addressing the girls. "We have arrived back at Earth." Their expressions didn't change, stuck somewhere between fury and confusion. Ashbourne looked at them, then turned back to the preserver. "If you ever pass by Earth again, do pay me a visit. I'd like to return the favor for all the hospitality you've shown me." The preserver gave a small, wrinkled smile. "If the stars align, I shall. This journey was not wasted. I've made a good friend." The girls looked at them with dead eyes. No one of them bothered speaking anymore. They just wanted to leave this cursed place. Ashbourne nodded, stepped back into his shattered cell, and stood in its center as light began to gather around him. The girls barely had time to react before that same radiant glow surrounded their own cells. In a blink, all 6 vanished, gone in streams of light, leaving only silence behind in the gallery of the last. The midday sun hung high in the sky, casting its golden rays on the familiar terrain. The girls stood in silence, the very ground beneath them the same as the one where they had been taken just the night prior. Earth. The warm air, the sound of birds, the smell of city life in the distance, it all felt right again. Relief washed over them like waves, even if their emotions remained a jumbled mess inside. Ashbourne stood a few steps away, pulling out his communicator. "Uncle Rex," he said casually, as if nothing had happened, "I won't be coming today. I went on an unexpected trip. Took a little more time than expected." He paused, listening to whatever the reply was, then continued, "No, it was just a trip, nothing out of ordinary. Had a great talk with a like-minded and accomplished person, and even had the pleasure to be introduced to animals I haven't seen before. No need to worry. I'm always okay." The girls listened to him in stunned silence. Kara, Raven, Starfire, Jinx and Barbara. None of them had words. He had saved them. Technically. But the route he took, making friends with their captor, treating their imprisonment like a vacation, and now casually ending it with a phone call, left a terrible taste in their mouths. Barbara, in particular, looked like she was ready to explode. Her eyes narrowed, jaw clenched, hands curling into fists. He made friends with the alien who locked us up like animals. She stepped forward, voice low but seething with fury. Ashbourne, I will break your bones. Ashbourne ended the call and turned to her, unimpressed. How ungrateful, he said flatly. You're not in a cage playing zoo animal thanks to me. Barbara didn't respond. She charged. Ashbourne didn't flinch. He raised his left arm, and a faint hum activated as the arm guard lit up. A shimmering shield deployed just in time. Barbara struck it head-on and was flung backward, tumbling across the grass. He stared down at her with a smug expression. And you didn't like it when I said you should stay in the cell. Look at yourself. So unreasonable. Barbara growled and got back to her feet, ready for round 2, but Starfire quickly moved in and held her back. Friend, please calm down, she said, her voice gentle but firm. Everyone is safe. That is what matters. Before anything more could escalate, a blur of wind and light slammed into the clearing. Superman landed in front of Kara, eyes filled with concern. Kara, he breathed, looking her over. I'm glad you're okay. What happened? Why did you disappear? Next to him, Flash zipped in and immediately noticed the tension in the air. Whoa, whoa. Why are you two fighting? He asked, looking between Barbara and Ashbourne. Ashbourne didn't answer. Instead, his eyes moved to Superman. Hey, Superman, he said, catching the Kryptonian's attention. Then, with a completely straight face, Ashbourne made a circle with the fingers of one hand and began sliding the index finger of his other hand in and out of it. You need to get your hips to move fast, he said, if you want to live the rest of your life on Earth instead of a nature reserve in a spaceship. Superman stared at him, expression somewhere between confusion and horror. What? Ashbourne simply nodded toward the girls. They will fill you in, he said. Then looked at Barbara and said, you should count your lucky stars that I was dragged with you. Ashbourne turned around and began walking away. Superman blinked, trying to process what just happened, then turned to Kara. She sighed heavily and muttered, it's a long, ridiculous story. Inside the Watchtower's briefing room, the Justice League gathered in the aftermath of the girls' unexpected alien abduction, and even more unexpected return. The atmosphere, while tense earlier, had now given way to an air of confusion and amusement. Flash leaned back in his chair, a wide grin plastered across his face. Okay, this is a new one, he chuckled. Superman gave a strained smile as he glanced toward the corridor where Kara had just walked out. I'm just glad she's fine, he said sincerely, his voice low. Kara hadn't said much since they returned. She had only nodded at him and quietly excused herself, the mental exhaustion clearly weighing on her. Just remembering the absurdity of what happened seemed to drain her. As the door slid shut behind her, Flash leaned closer to Superman and grinned. So, when are you going to start moving your hips? You need to create a new species after all. Superman closed his eyes and sighed. It's not that funny. I strongly disagree, Flash replied with a smirk. It's comedy gold. The doors opened again, and Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, stepped in, catching the tail end of the conversation, grinning. That guy is something else. I mean, the nerve to pull off a stunt like that, then straight-faced tell the big guy to move his hips. He laughed. Legend. Wonder Woman raised an eyebrow, arms crossed. Are we certain this man has no powers? She asked, glancing between the others. Batman, standing off to the side, answered without hesitation. Completely normal human. He's been caught in a few incidents by chance, but despite his unorthodox demeanor, his judgment and decisions have proven consistently sound. Even in this situation. Diana asked, unconvinced. He ended a potential galactic standoff without a fight, Batman replied. No casualties, and the girls are back unharmed. His methods are questionable, but the results are effective. Wonder Woman's gaze softened, but her eyes were still curious. And what about that red dagger he gave the alien? Superman answered, He's mentioned before that he collects daggers. His collection includes a kryptonite dagger and one old enough it should be in a museum, both from the Joker. He never elaborated on the rest. I never expected he would have something like that. Which brings us to another point, Batman added. His access to magical items remains unknown, but based on their abilities, he's in contact with a competent mage, possibly more than one. Should we be worried? Hal asked, eyebrows raised. Superman shook his head. No. He's not a threat. He's helped more than once. And today, strange as it was, he did save the girls. The room was quiet for a moment before Flash broke it with another chuckle. Still can't believe he called it a happy mistake. Like he just stumbled into a theme park. To be fair, it was a space zoo, Hal added. Batman didn't crack a smile. When all was said and done, he didn't like Ashbourne one bit. The headlines were buzzing with excitement and intrigue. Shadow Corp had done it again. Today, one of its lesser-known subdivisions made waves in the most unexpected way. Ice cream. Not just any frozen treat. This was ice cream perfected through borderline absurd engineering. 7 new flavors, all calibrated to share the exact same freezing point. The result? Perfect consistency across every variety, whether it was vanilla storm, cosmic strawberry, or electric mint. Food critics were baffled. Consumers? Ecstatic. Freezers at shops were emptied within hours of delivery. And yet, that was just the appetizer for the week. Days later, a revolutionary patent shook the automotive and tech world, a shield generator to replace airbags. The design promised rapid deploying energy fields to shield passengers during collisions. More effective, more elegant, and naturally more expensive. But the price tag didn't stop the flood of companies lining up for a license. The buzz only grew when it was revealed the credit for the invention went to Gizmo, a young, up-and-coming engineer employed at Shadow Corporation. His achievement became a trending topic overnight, and several engineering universities extended offers for speaking engagements and collaborations. Gizmo, however, remained behind closed doors, still tinkering. As if to prove it wasn't done showing off, Shadow Corp released 3 new video games in a single week. Each one arrived fully polished, with no bugs or glitches to plague the players, an increasingly rare feat in the gaming world. Reviewers were stunned. Fans were thrilled. Forums lit up with praise, memes, and fan theories connecting subtle details across the different titles. With this triple hit, consumer products, technological innovation, and entertainment, Shadow Corp's market value officially surpassed LexCorp. And it was still rising. Though he rarely showed his face, Ashbourne ensured part of the new revenue quietly trickled toward Amanda Waller's Cadmus project, sent through the encrypted channels and layered accounts as agreed. Waller, never one to ignore a silent benefactor, responded in kind. Keeping her part of the agreement, Amanda voluntarily shared progress reports, project outlines, and security notes. She didn't need to be asked. She simply respected the way Ashbourne conducted business. Compared to Lex Luthor, whose controlling grip choked every partnership, Ashbourne's approach was refreshing. He asked for structure, not control. Protocols, not input or dominance. Cadmus's projects, now benefiting from dual funding by 2 of the world's most influential forces, was moving forward steadily. Researchers documented metahuman capabilities, cross-referenced DNA samples, and simultaneously advanced cloning procedures under tight security. And as for Ashbourne himself, he enjoyed his peace. No supervillains encounters. No superheroes coming through the window. No kidnaps. His days were filled with tasting test batches of future ice cream flavors, overseeing project launches, reviewing game designs, and occasionally exchanging encrypted quips with Waller. With the soaring success of Shadow Corp making headlines and stock prices climbing like a rocket, Ashbourne did something he rarely ever did, he celebrated. The finest restaurant in Metropolis, a towering structure of glass and elegance, had been booked out entirely. The chandeliers sparkled like stars over the polished marble floor, and live music filled the air with an upbeat tone that matched the buzzing excitement of the crowd. The guest list? Every employee of Shadow Corporation. Not a name left out. Ashbourne had made it clear, this party is for them. Servers moved through the room with trays of gourmet dishes and sparkling drinks. Laughter echoed through the elegant halls as departments mingled, engineers rubbing elbows with developers, logistics personnel cracking jokes with the security teams. There were smiles everywhere, but the loudest and most chaotic were, of course, the 4 ex-Hive members. They had long since traded villainy for employment, and tonight, they were louder than ever. Gizmo, never one to keep quiet, stood at the helm of the engineering crew, boasting about his recent upgrades to the shield tech between bites of smoked salmon. Mammoth, a giant in every sense, was holding a challenge to see which construction team member could lift a dining table the fastest, while still being classy about it. Billy, loud and theatrical as always, had somehow controlled the music system to blast game theme remixes while his gaming crew celebrated the recent triple launch. KYD, calm and silent as always, didn't speak much, but his logistics crew stood behind him like a military squad. On the sidelines, Victor and Nora, 2 quieter guests, shared a table for 2 by the window. Their world seemed separate from the roaring party behind them, talking softly and laughing as if the chaos didn't exist. Watching from a high-railed balcony above the floor, Ashbourne stood beside Rex, sipping on a drink, visibly amused. Rex elbowed him gently and asked, "So, when are you gonna find a girlfriend?" "You know, your dad met your mom when he was your age." Ashbourne raised a brow and shrugged with a smirk. "There are more important things than finding someone. Besides..." He turned to face Rex fully and spread his arms with mock arrogance. "Look at me. Who could possibly resist this? I can get one whenever I want." Rex let out a hearty laugh. "Keep thinking like that, and one day you'll wake up old and realize the only ones interested in you are interested in your wallet." Ashbourne sipped his drink nonchalantly. "Then let them. I'm never going to be an old man anyway." Rex rolled his eyes. "You're an idiot." Ashbourne was about to respond when his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He answered without hesitation. The voice on the other end was unmistakable. Wild. Whimsical. Deadly. "Hey, buddy," the Joker chirped. "I'm preparing a big party. My biggest yet. And guess what? I want you to be a victim. Guest." Ashbourne didn't even blink. "How nice of you to remember. I sincerely thank you for the invite. I'll make sure to be there. Just send the date and location." There was a gleeful pause. "Splendid. I'll send it soon, Tilda. See you then," Ashbourne said, ending the call casually. Rex frowned. Who was that? Ashbourne slipped the phone back into his coat. "An acquaintance from Gotham City. He's inviting me to a party he is hosting." Rex raised a brow. "I didn't know you had friends in Gotham City. Will you be going?" Ashbourne chuckled. "Of course. It sounds amusing." "Ash, you shouldn't go there. Gotham City is a dangerous place, and last time you ran into the Joker of all people. What if you run into him again?" Ashbourne shook his head. "It's not dangerous. Not in the slightest." He gave a calm smile, sipping the last of his drink. "Relax. I'm not going to Gotham anyway." Rex's shoulders didn't relax. Worry creased his brow. But he said nothing more. Because in the end, trying to stop Ashbourne was like trying to hold back a storm with bare hands. It was well past midnight when Ashbourne sat alone in his quiet office at the top floor of Shadow Corporation. The distant noise of the city murmured through the windows, but the room itself was still, serene, even peaceful. Then his phone buzzed again. A message popped up on the screen with no name, just an image of a grinning clown emoji followed by location and date: TV studio, Vegas 16th Street. 2 days from now at 7 p.m. "Don't be late." Winking face. Ashbourne read it once, then calmly set the phone down beside him. So the Joker decided to visit Vegas instead of staying in Gotham. Everyone knows what kind of person Joker is. The Joker is going all the way to Vegas means he is planning something big. He was still staring at the screen when another encrypted message arrived. This one from Cadmus shared across their channels. Update. Subject: the 5 metahuman confirmed missing. Possible abduction. Suspect: Joker. Warning level: critical. Abilities: Harold, energy projecting. Melanie, magnetism control. Jack, superhuman strength. Tex, flexibility and elasticity. Ace, reality-bending illusions via direct eye contact. Prolonged exposure leads to cognitive failure, permanent brain damage. Ashbourne leaned back in his chair. Ace. A name that stirred memories as he recalled her story from another world. A girl who was powerful beyond measure, yet broken. Someone who had been used and chained, feared, and misunderstood. A tragedy that had played out under the radar until it was too late. Is it the same Ace? He murmured to himself. Or did this one walk a different path? His eyes drifted to the window, where the neon lights of Metropolis reflected off the glass. Her name dampened his mood slightly. It was something he rarely felt, not since he came to this world: empathy. Ashbourne sat silently in the backseat of a sleek, black car moving through the glimmering and loud streets of Vegas. His eyes were fixed on his phone, where a live feed had been running for a few minutes now. The Joker's chaos was already in full swing. On screen, the Justice League raced against time, disabling bombs scattered across Vegas, on bridges, in parks, near and inside casinos, while having to fight the superpowered individual Joker freed from Cadmus. Each success came with mounting tension, not knowing if they will be able to stop all bombs in time. And with the Joker watching them closely, it only added to that pressure. Ashbourne watched it all, calm and still as ever, the flashing images reflected in his gaze. The car slowed. "We're here," the driver said. Ashbourne stepped out of the car, and before him loomed the TV station where the Joker had claimed for his party. Ashbourne already knew what awaited him inside. He glanced at his watch. 6:55 p.m. Then entered the building. The halls were empty. Clearly the Joker had either killed the people or tied them somewhere out of the way. But Ashbourne didn't care much about that. Soon, he could hear the faint sound of laughter echoed ahead, high-pitched, deranged. Finally, he stepped into the studio. Cameras were pointing from all directions at the center of the stage, where a lone figure sat, Ace. A young pale girl in a simple black and white cloth, still as a statue, her eyes staring unblinking and void of emotion, fixed straight ahead at the camera. The Joker stood in front of her, cackling to the camera like a game show host on the brink of collapse. When he noticed Ashbourne entering, he paused, then grinned. Ashbourne offered a slight wave, leaned casually to one side, and gestured for him to continue. "Don't let me interrupt." The Joker stared for a beat, then howled with laughter. "Ah, now that's the spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, the real guest of honor has arrived." He turned the camera, angling it so it now showed Ace fully. The viewers were trapped by Ace's power, but they were still able to comprehend words and what was going on. Across the country, tens of millions who were watching the live stream were staring helplessly with eyes wide, expressions locked, minds blank. Ace's gaze reached through the screen. Her power didn't just manipulate reality, it rewrote perception. Those exposed were paralyzed, trapped in mental prison of their own hallucinations. "And there is little Ace," the Joker crooned, walking a slow circle around her. "Little Ace. Born cursed. Born with power. And what did they do? The government kidnapped her and threw her in a cage, experimented with her. Said she was dangerous. So they made her wear a headband. They turned her into a sweet little puppet. Didn't they? Made her quiet. Obedient. Because gods forbid she hurt someone by accident. Ha!" His grin widened. "You see, her power lets her alter your reality. One look, and you see what she wants you to see. For most people, that's madness. Terror. You can't even look away from her now, can you?" He tilted his head, laughing again. "Oh, don't worry. I'm not affected. I'm already mad." He tapped his skull. "Upstairs? Lights out, baby." Then, he turned to Ashbourne. "But enough foreplay. For today's big finale, we have one last guest." He theatrically bowed. "Ashbourne, my good buddy, step into the spotlight. The stage is yours." Ashbourne stepped forward confidently in slow, deliberate steps. The Joker aimed the camera so that both Ashbourne and Ace were in frame. Ashbourne smirked, eyes on the girl. "You really pulled off your biggest stunt yet," he said coolly. The Joker's grin sharpened. "Of course. And I wanted a little heart-to-heart with you after the last 2 times before the curtain falls." The Joker looked at Ace with a glint in his eyes and a wide smile. He said, "Acey, why not give him a piece of you?" Mind Ace's gaze shifted for the first time. She looked directly at Ashbourne. There was silence in the room for a few seconds. Then nothing happened. The Joker's grin melted into a baffled frown. His eyes darted between Ace and Ashbourne, clearly not comprehending the lack of reaction. Ace, still seated, was staring right at Ashbourne, unblinking, intense. But Ashbourne was perfectly fine. AC? The Joker's voice cracked with uncertainty. Juice up, sweetheart. Still nothing. Ashbourne slowly tilted his head, still smiling, as he drew a gun from his coat and aimed it lazily at the Joker. Am I the only one having a strong sense of déjà vu? The Joker blinked rapidly, gears turning but finding no traction. Ashbourne is still smiling like usual. Why are you not going crazy? The Joker asked, clearly confused. Good question, Ashbourne replied. I guess we just confirmed I'm also insane. But again, who needs sanity? It is overrated, don't you think? The Joker took a nervous step back. On second thought, he muttered, inviting you was not the brightest idea. Ashbourne didn't reply. He simply extended his free hand, palm up, fingers twitching in a beckoning gesture. The Joker stared at it, bewildered. My souvenir, Ashbourne said calmly. The dagger. You have one. Hand it over. The Joker's eye twitched violently. He reluctantly pulled a small knife from his coat and tossed it toward Ashbourne. Ashbourne caught it, inspected it, then looked back with unimpressed eyes. This is just a regular knife. He raised an eyebrow. Where's the good stuff? Darkness crept into the Joker's face. Where am I supposed to keep getting unique ones? I'm a homicidal maniac, not a treasure collector. Ashbourne sighed, rolling his eyes. This trip was for nothing, then. A sudden slam of a door burst the tension. Harley Quinn stormed into the studio, eyes wild with fury. You slimy, cheating clown, she shouted. You were getting too close to that girl. I saw it. Picking her over me. I've been there through every shootout and asylum break, and this is how you treat me. She stopped mid-rant as she noticed Ashbourne pointing a gun at the Joker. Ashbourne looked at her. You want a moment alone with him? Harley blinked, then nodded furiously. Ashbourne walked past the Joker and handed the gun to Harley. I am rooting for you. He's all yours. Without a second of hesitation, Harley stomped toward the Joker with a gun in hand, still yelling. You lowlife, purple-suited dirtbag. I broke my bat for you. The Joker backpedaled fast, raising his hands. Charles. There's a misunderstanding here. Really. You're one of a kind, my special cupcake. There's a bond between us. Like. Harley's eyes softened, suddenly hopeful. Like what, Puddin'? Say it. The Joker's manic grin suddenly twisted into a glare. Like you brought Batman here. Then, without warning, he punched Harley across the face, knocking her sideways. Ashbourne didn't move. His hands were now in his pockets as he stood calmly, watching like an entertained patron in a theater. The Joker marched forward. Come on out, bats. I know you're here. From the shadows above, a blur dropped like a hawk. Crack! Batman landed squarely on the Joker, knocking him to the floor. The clown gasped, limbs flailing. AC! The Joker shrieked. This one's sane. Do it. Ace's gaze slowly turned to Batman. The Dark Knight staggered as it hit him. His movement slowed, his breath quickened. He raised his hands as strange visions flooded his mind, hallucinations clawing at his sanity. Then, bang! The shot echoed through the studio. Batman groaned and collapsed to his knees, then to the floor. The Joker sat up, eyes wide. His grin vanished entirely as he stared at the fallen bat. Then, slowly, his gaze turned to Harley, who stood a few feet away, gun raised, arms trembling, eyes confused. Oops, she mumbled. Then she slumped to the side, asleep from the Joker's punch. Even Ashbourne's eyes widened in disbelief. He didn't plan or intend to repeat this again. The Joker was confused and then spoke. What the hell? Why does this keep happening? Ashbourne, what the hell did you do? Well, he said, stunned. That wasn't me. He lifted both hands slowly. No one can blame me this time. It was your sidekick. The Joker stood up and said, it was your damn gun again, as he pointed angrily at the sleeping Harley. Ashbourne walked forward to the Joker slowly. When the Joker turned around, he found Ashbourne's hand extended into his jacket pocket, pulling a golden headband from it. The Joker's face changed as Ashbourne said, well, what do we have here? The Joker's eyes snapped to Ace, who was no longer sitting. Ace was standing. Her eyes narrowed dangerously at the Joker. And then, slowly, she began walking. The Joker chuckled nervously, stepping backward. "Hey, now, AC, let's all calm down. This is just a misunderstanding, really." Ace's voice was cold and deliberate. "I don't fear you," she said. "I know what it means, to make people afraid." There was no humor in her tone, no madness like his. Just quiet, resolute truth. The Joker kept stepping back, sweat forming on his painted brow. "AC, sweetie, listen, I only meant to." She didn't blink. She didn't slow. And when his back finally met the cold wall behind him, the Joker dropped into a crouch, shielding his face with his arms. "Don't hurt me," he squealed. Ace stopped just a foot away from him. She knelt slowly and reached a hand gently toward his head. Her voice was soft now. "Don't be afraid." She patted his head. The Joker, peeking up with a nervous smile, tried to play it off. "That's my good little girl." But the moment their eyes met, he screamed. His limbs went rigid, and he collapsed to the ground, eyes wide open, drool spilling from his mouth. He twitched once, then went still. Ashbourne watched silently, the headband still dangling from his fingers. Ace turned. Her eyes locked onto Ashbourne as she walked slowly toward him. "You are different," she said, voice low. "You don't fear me. You don't care what could happen." Ashbourne met her gaze with a calm smile. "You're just a normal person with a unique trick. Should I be afraid? Like the other idiots out there?" Ace didn't respond. She just turned and walked away, heading toward the broken studio doors. Ashbourne's voice followed her. "If you need help, or someone to talk to, reach out to me. I'm Ashbourne Black. I'm usually in Metropolis." Ace paused at the door. She didn't look back. Ashbourne turned toward the main camera. He looked directly into the lens. "This is the TV station on Vegas 16th Street, he said clearly. "Someone come pick them up." He gestured loosely to the scene behind him. Batman still groaning on the ground, the Joker out cold and twitching, Harley Quinn snoring gently on her side. Then Ashbourne pocketed the headband, turned, and walked out, leaving behind the wreckage of 3 very different knockouts. Ashbourne stepped out of the TV station, the cool night breeze ruffling his coat slightly. He walked calmly, hands in his pockets, as if he hadn't just witnessed one of the most surreal nights of the year. Before he could take another step, a red blur zipped into existence before him, the Flash. He scanned Ashbourne up and down. Ashbourne didn't even blink. "They are inside." The Flash stared at him in silence for a beat, then wordlessly dashed into the building. Ashbourne took another step when the air above him split with a sonic boom. Superman landed with a heavy thud, his eyes narrowing as he looked Ashbourne over. "What are you doing here?" Superman asked, voice firm. Ashbourne didn't even slow down as he walked past him toward the sleek black car parked nearby. "I was invited to a party," he replied flatly. "Turned out to be a lame one." Superman floated after him, arms folded, frown deepening. "You knew about this?" Ashbourne glanced at him with a sideways smile. "All the Joker told me was to be here at 7 p.m. for a party. That's exactly what I did." He opened the car door and paused. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm heading back to Metropolis. Feel free to visit my office if you need anything." Without another word, he stepped inside the car, closed the door, and it pulled away from the curb, leaving Superman standing there speechless. Inside the building, heroes rushed to clean up the mess. But outside, the narrative had already changed. The millions who had been trapped in the live broadcast, their minds caught in the power of Ace's gaze, had seen everything. They had watched as the Justice League scrambled to disable bombs that turned out to be nothing but distractions. They had seen Batman brought to his knees by a stray bullet, from Harley Quinn, of all people, and then unceremoniously passed out. But more importantly, they had seen Ashbourne. He had faced Ace without hesitation or fear. He had kept his calm, turned the Joker's game upside down, got his souvenir and left with the same calm swagger with which he arrived. The public's verdict was swift. It wasn't the Justice League who had saved them. It was Ashbourne Black. And back in the car, as the neon lights of Vegas airport drew closer, Ashbourne's phone buzzed. A message from Rex lit up the screen. "Your acquaintance was the Joker of all people? How could you go to him on your own feet alone?" Ashbourne sighed and let it slide for now. Another buzz. This one from Amanda Waller. Did you know what the Joker was planning? Why didn't you stop Ace if you were immune to her? He shook his head with a small smirk. Not surprised by Director Waller, always authoritative and cares only about the objective. More messages followed. From Gizmo, Mammoth, Billy, even Victor and Nora. Concerned, worried, and confused. All of them were worried about him. Ashbourne leaned his head back against the seat and stared at the city lights passing by through the window. This was the price he paid for keeping his powers hidden, for acting like he was just another clever, reckless man in a suit rather than the monster that lurked behind the smile. They all cared. And because they cared, they are worried. He couldn't be annoyed with them. It would be just a hypocrisy. In the Batcave, Superman, Martian Manhunter, Wonder Woman, and the Flash stood silently before the Batcomputer while Batman, seated in his chair, glowered at the floor like it had personally offended him. He didn't want them there. He never liked anyone in his cave. It was his space. But this time he loathed their presence. Bruce Wayne, the Batman, one of the founding pillars of the Justice League, the silent guardian of Gotham, the man who had stood shoulder to shoulder with gods and monsters, had been reduced to a punchline. 3 times. The first, a misfired gun. The second, a deflected bullet. And the third, Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn. With a sleepy oops. It wasn't even the pain that got to him. It was the broadcast. More than 70 million people witnessed it. Not on some obscure footage tucked away in a villain's lair. Live. Public. Immortalized. He was the Batman. And he was humiliated 3 times. He didn't say it, wouldn't say it out loud, but deep down, he suspected Ashbourne had a hand in at least the first 2. No proof. Just a nagging feeling. And the third. He couldn't blame that one on Ashbourne. Harley had pulled the trigger. But somehow, that made it worse. His teammates looked at him with concern, and that only made the humiliation worse. Bruce's mind shifted back to the real issue, the one his pride was trying to avoid. Ashbourne. Ashbourne Black knew something. At the very least, he knew the Joker was planning something. Instead of alerting the League, or the police, or anyone, he just showed up. Alone. With a smile. Superman was the first to speak, arms crossed. The Joker has a grudge against Ashbourne. He went out of his way to invite him. That could happen again. Bruce's eye twitched, though his face remained cold. Of course it could happen again. Wonder Woman stepped forward, voice stern. Ashbourne Black's actions were irresponsible and reckless. He should be punished. By the laws of man, he's an accomplice. He withheld vital information. The Flash raised a hand. Hold on. He didn't know what was going on, or the scale of it. He was just invited to a place at a given time and showed up. That's not a crime. A pause. Then he added with a thoughtful tilt of the head, and I don't think this'll happen again. He was there for the dagger. He was clearly disappointed by the Joker's normal knife. A moment of silence followed. That was the thing that troubled them the most. Ashbourne was disappointed by a mass-murdering maniac's knife, not the madman's show that was going on. Even Bruce paused, recalling the stupid reason Ashbourne went there in the first place. He leaned forward, shadows creeping across his face as he stared at the Batcomputer. What concerns me is how he avoided Ace's power. Everyone's focus was on him. Bruce continued, everyone was affected. Even you, Clark. The Joker, for all his insanity, nearly went into a vegetative state. If not for John. Martian Manhunter gave a slow nod of confirmation. Bruce stood. We need to pay Ashbourne a visit. Find out what is hiding. Superman frowned slightly. Bruce, we can't just interrogate someone for not being affected by something we don't understand. He's never done anything wrong. He's helped, even if he's unconventional. I agree, Flash said, arms crossed. It could just be another magical artifact he's using. I mean, he clearly enjoys collecting weird stuff. Wonder Woman folded her arms, eyes narrowing. But Bruce has a point. We don't know what is hiding. What if it's something dangerous? And it could also help countering Ace when we find the heroes were clearly divided on what to do with Ashbourne. But before they could continue, The soft but deliberate sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the staircase. All heads turned as Alfred Penneth, the ever-composed butler of Wayne Manor, walked down the stairs with a small package in his hands. He gave a slight nod to the gathered heroes. "Apologies for the interruption, but I thought Master Bruce might want to see this immediately." Bruce arched a brow. "What is it?" "A package, sir. Delivered just now. From Mr. Ashbourne Black." Those 3 words froze the room. All at once, Superman's gaze sharpened. Wonder Woman turned to face Alfred fully, and Flash tilted his head with barely restrained curiosity. Bruce's eyes narrowed as he looked at Clark. "What's inside?" he asked quietly. Clark peered through the packaging with his X-ray vision, and frowned. "A metal box. And a letter in an envelope. I can't see the box content." That made everyone raise their guard. Flash's grin crept across his face. "If you're worried about the contents, I can open it. I move faster than anything in there, just in case it's a trick." Bruce remained still, calculating, analyzing. Then, after a pause, he nodded. "Be careful." Alfred approached and handed the package to Flash, who zipped a few feet away from the group. In a blink, the envelope was open, and he cleared his throat theatrically. "All right, let's see." His voice echoed in the silence as he read, "Dear Bruce, it is lamentable that you keep experiencing groin-related accidents in my presence, and it is quite concerning for the Wayne family future if this continues. I would have suggested you take a break to breed an heir or head to some sperm bank to have a backup plan, but I doubt you would do either of those of your free will. So I made a prototype for the second best solution I can offer to keep your biological tool intact. It is made by the best material engineers to ensure optimal protection while keeping you comfortable and without limiting your mobility. Regards, Ashbourne Black." The Batcave was dead silent for a heartbeat. Then Flash opened the box. He gasped. His hands trembled as he pulled the item from inside, desperately biting his lip to contain a laugh. The object gleamed under the Batcave lights, catching the attention of everyone present. It was a metallic pair of underwear, crafted like advanced armor, sleek and oddly flexible, but undeniably shaped like a pair of pants with a ridiculous-looking bulge in the front. Something between a medieval codpiece and futuristic exo-armor. Flash turned it in his hands, then slowly pulled the sides apart. The whole thing expanded elastically, stretching and snapping back into shape. He choked back a laugh. It feels like elastic metal. I think it might actually be wearable." Superman raised an eyebrow. Wonder Woman blinked once. Martian Manhunter said nothing but looked mildly impressed. And Bruce. Bruce's face darkened like a brewing storm. His voice, low and cold, cut through the awkward stillness. "I am paying Ashbourne a visit." Superman didn't argue. Flash, still shaking with silent laughter, gave a thumbs up. No one said another word. Ashbourne had angered Batman. Ashbourne Black leaned back in his chair, a bemused smile curling his lips as he studied the 2 figures standing in his office, Superman and Batman. The air in the room was filled with unspoken tension. His gaze shifted downwards and lingered just a little too long on Batman's lower half before he let out a theatrical sigh. "It seems," Ashbourne said with a wry note, "my gift wasn't to your liking after all." Batman's voice was cold. "Stop the jokes and silly plays, Ashbourne. You knew about the Joker, and you hid it." Ashbourne's smile didn't falter. "I haven't done anything against the law," he replied smoothly. "And, last I checked, I don't answer to you. If you're upset about arriving late to the party." He gave a slow shrug. "Do better next time." Batman's eyes narrowed dangerously, but Ashbourne remained completely unfazed. He stood, walking leisurely over to a sleek bar cabinet against the side of the room. The click of glass against wood echoed as he opened it. "I had this installed recently," he said, voice casual. "People keep dropping by, uninvited or otherwise. Might as well make it hospitable. What would you gentlemen like to drink?" Batman's voice cut through the room like frost. "You think this is funny?" "I do," Ashbourne said instantly, reaching for a bottle without so much as a backward glance. A sharp thunk rang out as a batarang suddenly struck the bottle in his hand, shattering it. Glass and golden liquid cascaded to the floor. Ashbourne merely raised an eyebrow and looked at the ruined bottle with vague amusement, then tossed the remnants aside with a clink. "I take it you are not in mood for any drink," he said calmly, "but that was uncalled for. If it is an intimidation tactic, it doesn't work on me. Batman stepped forward, the tension in his body coiled and ready to strike again. But Superman placed a firm hand on his shoulder, halting him. Batman stared at Superman for a moment, then relented for now. Superman turned toward Ashbourne. Aside from the Joker, we have another question. How did you resist Ace's power? Ashbourne, unfazed, casually grabbed another bottle, poured a drink, and took a sip before responding. A little trick I picked up, he said. Doesn't concern you. You can't replicate it anyway. But if it helps, think of it as me being extra crazy. Batman's eyes narrowed again. And the source of your magical items? Ashbourne didn't look up. You're awfully concerned with me today, Bruce. I could give you 100 lies if that would make you feel better. But again, none of this concerns you. Batman took a slow step forward, his voice lowering. Do you think you're untouchable? He asked. We'll find the answers one way or another. It's just a matter of how hard you want to make it for yourself. Now standing only 2 feet away from Ashbourne, Batman's presence was like a shadow growing over the room. Ashbourne finally looked up and laughed, not nervously, but with genuine amusement, shaking his head like a teacher bemused by a child's tantrum. That laughter only added fuel to Batman's burning anger. Without warning, Batman struck. His fist landed squarely on Ashbourne's face, making him stumble a few steps back. Batman! Superman barked, frowning. But Batman didn't care. His voice, cold as winter, echoed through the room. You're not untouchable. You are just a fool playing around. When we take your money and your luck, what's left? Ashbourne, now facing the floor, stood in still silence. For the first time in a long while, Ashbourne felt something shift inside himself. That punch, it hadn't truly hurt him, but it annoyed him. This was the first time in this life someone had laid a hand on him. Then he looked up. His smile was gone. His voice was quiet, emotionless. When you do that, Ashbourne will remain. But what about you, Bruce? The air grew colder. What remains after that? Ashbourne said, Nothing. You will have no value left in the world. His words received no reaction from Batman, just silent staring as if not even worth acknowledging. For a moment, Ashbourne considered ending the hero, but then Ashbourne's smile returned. But this time, it was twisted, crooked, cold and brimming with malice. Fine, he said in an eerily amused tone. I will play. But first I will make it fair. Something about Ashbourne screamed malice, and the two heroes felt it. Batman stood his ground, but his face turned cautious. Superman spoke, trying to defuse the situation. Ashbourne. Superman's lips had barely parted to speak when Ashbourne raised his right arm without warning. A soft hiss. A metallic click. Then a missile rocketed forward, straight at Batman. Bruce ducked just in time, the projectile missing him by inches. His cape flared behind him as he charged forward to tackle Ashbourne. But Ashbourne didn't retreat. His leg whipped up with sudden speed, catching Batman in the face and sending him staggering to the right. Simultaneously, the missile reached Superman. He didn't move to dodge, it was instinct, a lifetime of durability making him think it was unnecessary. The explosion wasn't fire or shrapnel. It was worse. A dense cloud of green mist burst out in a pulse, surrounding him. Superman's face twisted in agony as the kryptonite took hold. His knees buckled, the once invincible man of steel crashing to the ground with a strangled breath. Batman flipped backward to recover from the kick, his body moving on reflex, but a second missile whistled through the air and struck him in the back mid-movement. The impact knocked him across the room. He groaned as pain flared through his torso, armor straining to hold together. But before he could even hit the ground fully, a third missile found him, right in the side. Boom! A second explosion erupted, smoke and fire swallowing Batman as he hit the ground hard and slid to a stop near the office door. His suit sparked. His cape was torn. Blood trickled from under his cowl. Ashbourne hadn't moved from his spot. He stood silently, watching. On one side, Superman writhed, struggling for breath, choking on the kryptonite dust filling the air. On the other, Batman lay bloodied and unmoving, barely meters from the entrance. The door burst open. Rex stumbled in, his face pale as a ghost. His eyes snapped to the battered figure of Batman in front of him. then to Superman lying broken and weakened near Ashbourne's desk. He froze. "Uncle Rex," Ashbourne's voice cut through the smoke with unnatural calm. "Please call the police. Say there was a murder attempt. Move. Now." Rex's throat moved, trying to speak, but no words came. After a heartbeat of hesitation, he turned and bolted down the hall. Ashbourne pulled out his phone. He dialed. "Lex," he said calmly, "bring your press companies to Shadow Corp immediately. You're about to get the perfect opportunity to ruin the images of Superman and Batman." He hung up before Lex could even respond. On the other end, Lex Luthor blinked in confusion, staring at his phone. But after a moment, he rose. Ashbourne had never lied to him. Never tricked him. That was reason enough to move. Ashbourne made another call, this one to Amanda Waller. "I have a situation," he said curtly. "Superman and Batman are in my office. One's crawling on the floor, the other is unconscious. This is your chance to put a leash on the Justice League. Prepare to make use of it." Amanda Waller didn't even hesitate. Within a minute, her agents were on their way to find what was going on. Ashbourne lowered his phone and looked out the large glass window of his office, watching the city below. His smile returned. And this time, there was no humor in it. Regardless of the reasons or his own actions, he won't let someone walk away after this, and he knew exactly how to deal with them. He didn't live this long in vain. The world watched with wide eyes and bated breath as every major news channel displayed the same jarring footage. Images of Batman and Superman, beaten and blooded, being escorted by stunned police officers out of the Shadow Corporation. Breaking news, one anchor declared. Billionaire genius and Shadow Corp CEO, Ashbourne Black, was the victim of an attempted murder today by none other than Batman and Superman. The heroes, once praised as protectors, are now being dragged by authorities. Ashbourne Black has announced he will be pressing charges. Across the screens, a video snippet played on loop. Superman coughing violently and can't even stand, Batman unconscious and blooded being carried away. The footage ended with police confused faces, still wary, as if expecting the two to suddenly wake and retaliate. With Lex Luthor pulling strings behind the scenes, subtle narratives wormed their way into the headlines. Have the world's greatest heroes grown too arrogant? Gods among us or tyrants? Justice League, protectors, or potential overlords? Commentators, with practiced concern, debated over the desk. They answer to no government. No oversight. What happens when they disagree with humanity's choices? Do they simply take control? Across the globe, trust in the Justice League trembled. In the heart of the Watchtower, alarms buzzed and members gathered. Within seconds, the Flash, Wonder Woman, and Martian Manhunter were gone, streaking toward the Earth below. The trio wanted to meet with their comrades, but they were met with tight security and an unusual atmosphere. Civilians recording with their phones, news vans lining the streets, and an air of disbelief. When they were finally allowed inside, they were brought to the security room where footage was played without edits. Their expressions hardened with each second. Batman's punch. Ashbourne's missiles. Superman collapsing in kryptonite mist. The unmistakable chaos. Why would they even do this? The Flash murmured, unable to look away. The security official replied, "Mr. Black is pressing charges. Official statement says he acted in self-defense. The footage supports that." "Where are they now?" Wonder Woman asked, her tone low but firm. "Medical wing. Under heavy watch." The heroes exchanged grim looks. Not long after, the calm in Ashbourne's office shattered. Crash. Supergirl burst through the doors with heat in her eyes and rage in her voice. Her fists clenched as she stormed across the room. "Ashbourne," she barked, fury flaring in every word. "What the hell are you doing now?" Ashbourne, seated behind his desk with a cup of tea steaming beside him, didn't flinch. He glanced up, the cool mask of composure draped across his face. "I assume you're referring to the incident," he said calmly. Supergirl slammed her palms onto the desk, causing it to shake. "You poisoned Kal-El with kryptonite. You fired missiles at Batman. And now you're playing the victim." "I am the victim," Ashbourne said, unbothered. "They insulted and attacked me in my own office. I defended myself. And I have the footage to prove it." "You provoked Batman and now you are pressing charges?" she asked through clenched teeth. Ashbourne leaned back, the faintest trace of a smirk curling at the corner of his lips. Actions have consequences. If mine led me to be attacked in my office, what about Batman? Even heroes should have consequences, don't you think? In an underground meeting, Ashbourne sat across from two of the most calculating minds on Earth, Amanda Waller and Lex Luthor. Lex tapped a folder on the table, his tone filled with quiet triumph. With the footage and the witnesses, this is airtight. We play it right, and Superman and Batman serve time. A year. Maybe 2. Public trust shifts. Justice League loses its teeth. Amanda Waller, arms crossed and unreadable, didn't bother looking at Lex. What matters more is the optics. We'll get more government support than ever. Public opinion is already shifting. This changes the game in our favor. Ashbourne sipped his coffee, steam curling around his sharp gaze. Good. Then it's time you make up for the Royal Flush Gang incident. Amanda's posture stiffened slightly, but she didn't speak. No more snatching kids from their parents. No more raising them like wolves in a cage, he added. I let it go before because it started before Cadmus. Before you. But that kind of darkness won't fly moving forward. Amanda nodded. Understood. I've no intention of repeating past mistakes. Then, Ashbourne turned to Lex. Hate to break it to you, Ashbourne said smoothly, but I don't plan to imprison them. I will be dropping the charges. Or settling it outside the court. Lex's triumphant expression evaporated. What? This is our moment. They still act as the planet's watchdogs, Ashbourne cut him off. Removing them without a viable alternative is short-sighted. This move was meant to loosen Cadmus' leash and get me a small payback at Batman, not to weaken the League considerably. Lex slammed his hand on the table. You're wasting an opportunity. Don't let hatred and a small temptation blind you to the bigger picture, Ashbourne replied with a smile. Lex glared at him, nostrils flaring, but said nothing more. Amanda remained calm, nodding slightly. He's right, she said. Earth still needs heroes, especially against extraterrestrial threats. Especially Superman. Days later, a storm of flashing cameras and murmuring crowds surrounded the courthouse. With the charges officially pressed and the mountain of evidence impossible to dismiss, Superman and Batman were brought to court, hands bound, escorted silently by law enforcement. They did not resist. They didn't need to. The weight of the world's judgment was heavier than any chain. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was charged. Members of the Justice League filled the pews, eyes locked on Ashbourne, who sat calmly on the other side of the room. Supergirl in particular glared daggers, arms folded tightly across her chest. The doors opened again, and Batman and Superman, still cuffed, entered. A solemn officer stepped forward, unlocking them. The gesture was symbolic, especially for Superman. Everyone knew no cuff could truly hold him. The judge sat high on his bench, stern and composed. The same judge from Supergirl's trial. A sense of déjà vu hung over the room like a silent omen. The charges are clear, the judge began. Attempted assault, threats, and vigilantism without jurisdiction. Particularly disturbing when committed by those we once saw as paragons of justice. The room shifted as he continued. There's also the matter of Batman's identity. Under normal circumstances, his identity would be revealed for the purposes of this trial. But upon Mr. Black's request, we have refrained from exposing it. No one knows his real identity, including the police. Unless Batman receives a formal sentence, his true name will remain unknown. The room rippled in shock. Even Batman narrowed his eyes. He had assumed his identity remained secret due to fear. Or perhaps respect. But now it was clear, this wasn't fear or reverence. It was requested by the opponent. He glanced at Ashbourne, the man who refused to play any game by the rules everyone expected. What is this man playing at? Batman thought. The judge leaned forward. This case is unusual. Again, courtesy of Mr. Black. The jury is already prepared to deliver a verdict. It is a cut-clear case. But considering the unique circumstances we find ourselves in and before we start formally, Mr. Black, the court is open to hearing your opinion on how we should proceed. Another ripple through the league side. A judge, deferring to a civilian and one of the involved sides at that? But those who had watched Ashbourne's handling of Supergirl knew perhaps this man, odd as he was, still had a shred of reason and fairness. Even Ashbourne was mildly surprised. But he welcomed the control. Standing, he adjusted his coat and began. For those who missed the full case, Ashbourne said, voice calm and crisp, the two came to me asking personal questions. Questions about my collection and how I resisted Ace's psychic influence. He looked toward Batman briefly. Batman was unhappy with my refusal to answer. Tempers flared. Previous incidents added fuel. He threatened me, then attacked. The courtroom was silent. To be fair, Ashbourne continued, Superman did not strike and tried calming Batman earlier. But I still struck him, knowing full well he wouldn't let me harm Batman without intervening. It was preemptive, I admit. Speculative, even. He turned to the judge. For that, I suggest he be released. Superman is too valuable to Earth, and imprisoning him would be wasteful and foolish. There were murmurs of surprise. Superman blinked, momentarily stunned. Ashbourne's eyes sharpened. But Batman came with intent. He has demonstrated more than once that he is willing to break laws to achieve his goals. His only line in the sand is not to kill. Ashbourne stepped forward slightly, voice steady. That's not justice. That's convenience. He turned to face the jury now. Batman is, at the end of the day, a man with gadgets. A vigilante. If he truly wants to protect the world, he can pass his resources to someone else. Sponsor them. But he should no longer be the one in the field. A long silence followed. Ashbourne stepped back and sat down. The courtroom buzzed with low, disbelieving murmurs. Ashbourne's words rippled through the crowd like a cold wind. Even veteran reporters forgot to scribble notes, frozen in anticipation of what would unfold next. Batman narrowed his eyes behind the cowl. Why? If Ashbourne truly wanted him gone, there were simpler ways. Reveal his identity. Push the court for a sentence. Strip him down publicly. But instead, he preserved Bruce Wayne's secret and offered something different. This didn't add up. Superman, voice calm but firm, finally spoke. You can't reduce Batman to just gadgets. He's more than that. Ashbourne scoffed. More than that? What else? Intelligence? There are thousands, millions smarter than him. They can provide everything he does from the safety of a desk. No need to punch thugs in alleyways. Superman stepped forward slightly, his eyes locked on Ashbourne. He's among the most skilled and strongest humans on Earth. He's more than gadgets or smarts. Ashbourne smiled dryly. Can you even tell the difference in strength between humans? You're like a god arguing which can lift more crumbs. To you, we all look the same. Your opinion is biased at best. That statement cracked the room open. He trained for decades. He's saved lives. Batman isn't disposable. More voices joined the fray, some from the League, some from the audience. Emotion clashed with logic as support for the Dark Knight surged. The courtroom tilted on the edge of chaos. Bang! Bang! The judge slammed his gavel with authority, forcing silence to descend. Ashbourne turned, gaze locked on Batman, his voice colder now. Do you think your training makes you irreplaceable? The judge frowned, clearly disapproving of Ashbourne addressing Batman directly, but said nothing. Batman didn't respond immediately. His eyes sharpened. His mind ticked. This wasn't about ego. Ashbourne was setting the stage for something. But what? Finally, he spoke, voice calm and unwavering. I don't know if you'll find someone who can replace me, but I know you can't be the judge of that. You're a normal man, with no real training. Ashbourne's expression didn't change, but a faint flicker of something crossed his eyes. He turned to the judge. This is a unique case. One way or another, the verdict will cause backlash. So, if the court permits it, and if Batman would rather avoid prison and keep his identity safe, then let's test his words. The courtroom held its breath. Ashbourne's voice turned sharp, loud enough for all to hear. We do it the old way. He will fight me. No gadgets. No tech. Just hand-to-hand combat. The one thing he's spent decades perfecting. If he wins, it ends here. I drop everything. If he loses, his career, his right to put on that mask, becomes my call." A stunned silence followed. The judge's head tilted slightly in disbelief. Ashbourne had just challenged the world's greatest detective to a physical contest. A man said to be trained by assassins, monks, soldiers, and legends. It sounded absurd. Insane. Almost suicidal. Whispers broke out again. Some mocking, some shocked. This was Batman, he challenged. The judge's eyes darted toward Batman. Bruce had already straightened. His body still, his mind focused. He gave a single, sharp nod. Gasps swept the room. The judge turned to the jury, hoping for a signal of sanity. But even they, with bewildered faces, nodded. The gavel didn't fall this time. It didn't need to. The stage was set. The judgment would be written in sweat, fists, and fractured pride. As for Ashbourne, he smiled. For the first time in modern legal history, perhaps in the history of any civilized court, the verdict was to be delivered through a trial by combat. It was absurd, archaic, and borderline theatrical. Yet in this situation, strangely fitting. Judging Batman, a symbol of justice who had stood shoulder to shoulder with gods, through the cold rigidity of law felt incomplete. The court, the people, the world, it all needed more than a verdict. It needed resolution. But as the murmurs spread, so did the confidence of the crowd. Ashbourne's lucky streak ends today. He's smart, but that's Batman. He's going to be eaten alive. For many, the outcome was obvious. This wasn't just a fight. This was a lesson. Arrogance has a price, and Ashbourne was about to pay it in bruises. 30 minutes before the duel, inside a room reserved for preparation, Ashbourne stood before a mirror. He wore a plain white tank top and black training pants. His body was lean but clearly toned. Near him stood Rex, clearly uneasy, wringing his hands. "This is madness," Rex muttered. "You're going to fight Batman. What the hell were you thinking?" Ashbourne glanced at his reflection, adjusting the bandages on his hands. He smiled slightly. "Trust me a little, Uncle Rex. I don't lose." A knock at the door interrupted their exchange. "Come in," Ashbourne called. The door creaked open and Supergirl stepped in. Her eyes scanned him, pausing briefly at his physique before she blinked and looked away. Ashbourne cleared his throat, and she shook her head slightly, cheeks tinged pink. "What were you thinking?" she asked, her voice tense. "That's Batman. He's going to crush you. And don't forget, he already hates your guts." Ashbourne tilted his head. "Aren't you on his side?" "I am," she said plainly. "But that doesn't mean I want to see you beaten like a dog." Ashbourne laughed, a calm, amused sound. "Relax. I know what I'm doing." He turned back to the mirror. "The truth is, Batman is outclassed. This won't even be a fight." She stared at him, unconvinced. Rex mirrored her skepticism. Supergirl folded her arms. "Just surrender early. There's no shame in backing out before you get hurt. No one's expecting a miracle." She left with a final glance over her shoulder, her cape trailing behind her like a red shadow. Ashbourne didn't feel anger or frustration. Doubt from others was a natural reaction. No one had seen him fight. No one could understand. Even if Batman matched him in strength, speed, and reaction time, which he didn't, even the supposed experience of the Batman pales in comparison to the experience of centuries of brutal, soul-rending war. Gods. Rulers. Monarch. Iterim. He had survived them all. Thousands had gathered in the open courtyard behind the courthouse. It was cordoned off by temporary barriers and lined with spectators. Judges. Reporters. Civilians. Even Lex Luthor and Amanda Waller came to watch. Everyone wanted to witness the spectacle. Most of them wanted to see Ashbourne humbled. Ashbourne walked out confidently, each step slow, deliberate. His calm demeanor stirred confusion among those watching. Is he faking confidence? He doesn't look scared. Poor bastard has no clue. Across the courtyard stood Batman. Dressed in a sleek black tracksuit, only the bat mask remained, his symbol, his shield. Arms folded, he stood unmoving, every inch a predator assessing prey. His sharp eyes followed Ashbourne's every step, but deep within him, a faint unease twisted. This didn't feel right. Ashbourne wasn't nervous. He wasn't agitated. He wasn't pretending, either. Batman's instinct screamed trap. He'd already asked Superman, Wonder Woman, and Martian Manhunter to keep their eyes wide open. If he pulls anything, he had said, stop it immediately. Batman stepped forward, each movement calculated. He stopped just a few paces from Ashbourne, his posture rigid, the weight of suspicion heavy in his gaze. What are you playing at? Batman asked, voice low but sharp. What's the point of all this? Ashbourne's smile never faltered. You asked me a question, remember, he said with unnerving calm. And I gave you the answer. Even answered your portion of it. But you didn't seem convinced. The smile curled into something darker, predatory. So here we are. I told you I'd play. This is the answer to your question. A chill crawled up Batman's spine. His eyes narrowed, his instincts screaming. He remembered it now, that moment. When he struck Ashbourne in their earlier encounter, demanding answers. Everything that followed had been a path, deliberate and winding, leading here. No tricks. No gadgets. No advantages. Just this moment. Just him. Batman couldn't shake the feeling that he had walked into a trap, but one made from his own assumptions. And that smile, that damned smile on Ashbourne's face, it unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. Batman moved first. Fast. Sharp. Intent to end it before Ashbourne had a chance to pull something unexpected. He launched a powerful punch straight at his opponent's face. Full force, no holding back. But in a blur of motion, Ashbourne caught his wrist mid-flight. Then stepped forward. And with a sudden pivot, he pulled Batman's momentum past him and flipped him hard onto the ground. Jiu-jitsu. Gasps echoed from the crowd. 1 second, Batman was attacking with the ferocity of a legend. Then the next, he was flat on his back, staring up at the open sky. Ashbourne didn't follow up. He simply stood, arms relaxed, watching his opponent with that same grin. Remember, he said coolly, your future as a hero is on the line. Stand up. Batman rose, fast but cautious. He didn't know Ashbourne learned jiu-jitsu, and from this slam he could estimate that Ashbourne was probably as strong and fast as him. He hadn't expected any of this. He was a master of over a dozen martial arts with extensive training, but he'd let arrogance creep in earlier. He wouldn't make that mistake again. Ashbourne didn't wait. He advanced, fluid and quick, throwing a high kick. Batman saw it, anticipated the motion. He moved to block and counter. But Ashbourne's leg suddenly accelerated, a deceptive Brazilian kick, up then violently down. The strike crashed into Batman's shoulder, spinning him to the ground once more. The audience was silent. Again. 2 strikes. 2 takedowns. Ashbourne stood still, hands behind his back, as if this were nothing. I'm waiting for you, Batman. Batman rose again, slower this time. His legs were steady, but the pain was spreading, his vision briefly blurred. His mind raced. What did Ashbourne train in exactly? He gathered all available information about Ashbourne. He observed Ashbourne posture and movement carefully in his daily life before. There was no indication anywhere he was trained at all. Ashbourne waited patiently, then said, want to attack again, or should I? Batman offered no reply, just took his stance again. Ashbourne chuckled and lunged forward at full speed. Batman braced, waiting for the opening, but Ashbourne leapt at the last second, hands grasping Batman's shoulders as his body flipped over him. For a brief instant, Ashbourne's weight rested atop Batman, balancing in a moment of aerial control, as if performing a handstand on the Bat's shoulders. Batman realized too late what was happening. He raised his hands to guard his head, but Ashbourne's knee came crashing down, not at his skull, but squarely into his right shoulder. Crack. A sickening sound, followed by a grunt of pain. Batman dropped to the ground, clutching his shattered shoulder. Ashbourne stood over him, a cold smile on his face. He spoke no words this time. Instead, without warning, he raised a leg high, and brought it down with full force on Batman's head. The Dark Knight hit the ground hard. Blood pooled from a split in his brow, his breath ragged, fingers trembling. But he rose again. Slowly, painfully, face blooded, right arm useless, legs shaking beneath the weight of his own defiance. Ashbourne's smile widened. Then the storm began. Punches, kicks, blows from every direction. Ashbourne unleashed a relentless, brutal barrage, his fists and feet crashing against Batman's ribs, stomach, legs, back. The crowd could hardly watch. Batman, the symbol of human will and mastery, reduced to a punching bag. Ashbourne spoke between strikes, his voice calm, almost amused. "This is more amusing than I expected." Batman gave no answer. Only more silence. Only more resilience. Around them, murmurs spread like wildfire. Is this really happening? Someone stop this. Superman clenched his fists, ready to step forward, but Wonder Woman placed a hand on his chest. "This is the honor of a warrior," she said solemnly. "He chooses this." Batman swayed, barely conscious. Ashbourne halted his assault, breathing steady. Then, with a laugh, he stepped back. "I feel refreshed," he said to no one in particular. "I surrender." The words hit like thunder. Ashbourne, the victor, surrendered, mocking the rules, owning the moment. He looked at the broken man struggling to remain standing and spoke quietly, but clearly enough for the audience to hear. "I told you this is what would happen. This is what remained of us. Now, you understand." And with that, Ashbourne turned and walked away, leaving the legend of the Bat, battered and silent, in the dust.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously appreciate it if you could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out a lot and keeps me going. Plus, it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.